9 o'clock with Carol Johnson and the Ranger and the Forest Service update.
Okay. Appreciate being here to give you an update. It's been a busy month at the district. I think as you all probably saw, Kathy did a nice piece in the paper regarding the West End and the Night Riders Snowmobile Club sponsoring their poker ride or fun ride. Had a great day for that. The club had the trails in really nice condition. We worked with them on getting the trails signed and the safety hazards taken care of. So just want to commend the club. They did a nice job of getting the trails groomed up and helping us with the signing, and it went well. We have Heather Berman, who is our new resource assistant. Took Beth Kennedy's position, is here on the district now. She comes from the Lincoln National Forest out of New Mexico, and I hope to maybe she's just getting settled in. She's going to live in the government house just right across the alley from the district office there. So perhaps at the next meeting I'll have her come with me if it's open on her schedule, so that you have an opportunity to meet her.
What position was she, you said?
She'd be our resource assistant, she would have recreation and trails,
okay.
range, outfitter guides for both our district and the Plains-Thompson Falls district.
Did Beth hand off all the data and the paperwork on the trestle and all that fun stuff for the trails?
She did, and she's been in and met with Heather, but they're going to have to pick another day really to sit down and go over all of that route of the Olympian, because that's kind of complex with all the different ownerships and that sort of thing. And then speaking of route of the Olympian, there is a private parcel of 154-acre parcel that used to be owned by Jim Davis, and I forget now, if you look on the cadastral, who owns that. But it's been offered as being advertised by Twite Realty, and there were some folks from Texas that have expressed interest in purchasing that, and I understand they have made an offer on that parcel. And so the important point, I think, that I want to just make mention of is to access that parcel. They want to, in a couple years when they retire from Texas, build a year-round home on that parcel.
No way.
And I gave them, Tim, your name to call
I have told her everything from Sunday to. I said you're 45% and above. You're talking about avalanche, and it's 53%.
So anyway, the other implication would be in the wintertime, the access out of Hagen would be on a groomed snowmobile trail. And it would be, probably 3.5 miles from the Hagen interchange up on the rail grade there.
Yeah.
So, springtime, and we start getting calls for people looking at some of those isolated parcels, and access becomes an issue for us. We met with Bonneville Power, several forests did, and for us, they will continue in September their Taft Bald Mountain fiber optic project, as well as during this field season, they're going to be doing vegetation clearing under their 500 kV line that comes all the way through the district. So they have that scheduled for this year. And Northwest Energy is continuing to do clearing and pole replacement on their line. And I think out here by Slowway Campground, if you get some calls, the trees had encroached in on their line. They don't have the necessary clearing width that they needed for the 115. So they've taken, there's probably a truckload of pine out there that we're going to try and sell. There'll be a little bit more of that. Jim Ward and I met with Tim Reed, talking about the Title III money, and Jim had some suggestions of maybe some options to use Title III, and then I gave Tim James Drury's number, Jerry Drury.
I didn't get your email, sorry.
Okay, something must have fouled up there. And he's our contact in the regional office as far as when Tim finalizes his projects for Title III for you all. Jerry Drury would be the person to have him take a look at it to see if there's something that he thinks would not qualify. So for that. We met with Randy Russ. He was interested in how can volunteers help with when we have fires. And I haven't talked to Jim to see how. I think that was a good conversation. We met yesterday with the comm site users up on Thompson Peak, and looking at. We had a Washington office review of that comm site last summer. And there is a need to do some cleanup. We don't have any major deficiencies, but we have, there's some ways that we can do some better grounding and just clean up the site where we have people on one tower, some on another, and probably looking at Verizon putting a fence around their big lattice tower, and then I think probably looking at the county for the monopole, maybe taking the rungs off of so that people can't climb up on that tower for at least the bottom to where you'd have to have a ladder to get up there, especially since we use the top floor of the lookout for a cabin rental. So it seemed like it was well received by all the users, and then maybe getting a site users association so that they can coordinate. We meet once a year. And also looking at getting some uses up on that monopole. We have 3 folks down in Arkansas on fire, and maybe sending some more. We're looking at having a public meeting excuse me, for Red Bull at 6 o'clock on March 29th at the St. Regis Community Center. So I'd like to invite you all for that. We've had 2 or 3 miners that have just small little hand operations wanting to operate out in Trout Creek, and my folks have reviewed those, and they'll be under a notice of intent. Don't see any problems with what they want to do there. Tim Garcia was out for the last collaborative meeting. We were able to, the collaborative group came up with a farm bill project for Cruzan, and that's been submitted to the regional office and the farm bill, trying to get that selected by one of the farm bill teams. And it was about 1,000 acres of mechanical treatment was what we were looking at with that project. Jam Cracker, I'm reviewing the draft decision notice, and I'll be getting back with Pat Partica, our NEPA coordinator, today, and we will have, I think they're looking at publishing that decision notice probably next Friday in the Missoulian, and then from the date that it's published, folks have 45 days to file an objection as long as they have standing. So it's a process with that one. Murphy Creek and 7 Mag, we have those packages ready to go on the district, and they're going to be reviewed next Thursday by the forest. And so looking at Murphy Creek being a little stewardship project, we've taken a lot of money off of 7 Mag, off of the road package. I think we've reduced the road package about $110,000. We've reduced KV and BD. We're looking at trying to have some options for the non-saw, some of that dead lodge pole, so that a purchaser would have some options there. So I'm hoping we have something that's going to be attractive to industry. Green Brain, we're looking at that sale package being ready about the 1st of April, and camouflage, which will be a stewardship project. Mid-March, we will have that package ready to go to the SO. And pre-work next week is scheduled for West Trout with Tricon. And again, we've had a breach on the gate or something like that. And hopefully road conditions won't get too soft up there so they can get in. And then at the next meeting, when we schedule that, I think Nate Cagle will probably come with me, and he wants to talk to you about Schedule A and has some other opportunities where we may get some money to the county for road work.
Lost Creek?
Lost Creek?
You gonna do a little clearing thing in there?
Up there at the Meadows.
Yeah, the Lost Meadows.
Looking to try to maintain that meadow, so we have a scoping letter that went out.
Would it, you ever see a possibility of having a 2-3 unit campground in that area up there, right in there? I mean, or is do you see the road maintenance being kind of consistent, or is that gonna be kind of iffy about road maintenance?
Well, I guess just kind of depends on where our budgets go with that, Tim. But a lot of people do disperse camp there in up there in Lost Creek. That's the reason we kind of like to maintain that keep the meadow. Is a lot of people do camp there.
I don't think there's ever that many, but if we could just put them kind of in a designated area instead of letting them pick and choose and go and drive and whatever.
We certainly could organize it and add a few amenities, some regulation fire pits and that sort of thing to kind of keep people organized.
That'd be cool if we could get that done.
And
Now
those
that-
are really low-cost items that we
Now
can
that
do.
they've kind of blocked off those roads so that some people aren't down there mud bogging anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what was tearing things up.
that was really tearing the meadows up.
But the people, I mean, I think there's a happy medium. The people used to drive down and camp right by the creek. Now, if they said, okay, we have camp here,
Mhm.
you can walk down to the creek. I mean, it would help the situation up there.
Yeah, there's certainly things we can do that are, pretty low cost that would make a nice difference there. So we'll look at it. Okay, Bob, you wanna start in on Flat Creek here?
Yeah, Miss Lori, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you. Sir?
Hi.
Thank you. Folks, we have about 3 items that we want to talk with you about. The Flat Creek removal process that's going on. That's the joint effort between the Forest Service and the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. And just a couple things that we want to bring up. One, I'll give you an update as what actions have been taken, what's being planned, when it's being planned for the summer, and future plans. We would like to talk with you about possible disposal, or I should say, transfer of that private portion of property there. And also a little bit about, water, the infiltration gallery and, what we're doing to make sure we preserve that for emergency use for the city, and also, what other assets we can bring to maybe facilitate water needs. First of all, as you're probably aware of, Montana Department of Environmental Quality started their removal actions last fall. Basically, they got the contract out late in September, and it ended up that it was actually a company out of Bozeman that picked up the contract. They basically did the clearing and grubbing so they can have access to the contaminated tails in that private portion, which is the Marietta claim that's just below Hall Gulch there, and goes to Wood Gulch area. cleared it out. They did salvage timber off that, and that was sent to the mill in St. Regis, I believe. They did start excavation work in the repository area to prepare the repository to receive contaminated material, and also brought in some fill material for use in the construction of the repository and backfilling of some of the excavated areas in the channel area. And that material came from St. Regis. So basically, everything is in a shutdown mode. Talked to Joel Chavez, who is the lead for the DEQ this morning. They're looking at possibly the May time period to start back up and actually start the project
It's gonna
on.
be before then.
Well, yeah, we're kind of watching that
But
weather.
I've been talking to Owen, and we're coordinating a 40-hour HAZWOPER course and stuff. And he
Okay.
tells me when he wants to get on the ground. So.
Right, so, I'm hearing it from my state
Yeah.
contact, and he's talking May is probably the time period. So, as far as the Forest Service is involved in this, we participated by adding on a task onto that contract to remove the tails around the pipeline that crosses the tail, and that's about a half a mile below the infiltration gallery, where the pipeline is laid on top of contaminated tails. I've always made this promise that we have the design, so we are going to keep that infiltration gallery in operations while that work is being done, and the pipeline will be put back into a steel pipeline or a proper pipeline, so that there is no disruption to that infiltration gallery should that be needed for emergency use.
What kind of water would that be used for?
Well, it used to be the historic water source for the community of Superior, but because of the antimony issue, that it was basically put into a, not necessarily a mothball condition, but in a situation where it can be brought up in the event that there would be an emergency, such as a major fire in town or something happened to the water system.
Non-potable water, but something for,
Something in case of an emergency. And we're going to make sure that we keep that in that condition so we don't run ourselves into.
and basically put it in a sleeve to protect it from any leak, contamination, or is it more for protection of rupture?
All the above.
Okay.
Like right now, that steel pipeline is laying right on top of the tails, and it's exposed, and there is no safe way to work around that. It is just basically we're going to have to take a splice into that pipeline and then put it back in, and in some ways put it back into underground so it is protected underground.
All your good information, did we get your name and title for the record?
You betcha.
Did you get it already, Casey?
Okay,
Oh,
well.
well, go ahead.
Well, so
I was
anyway,
distracted. Yeah, what's your?
my name is Bob Wintergerst. That's winter is in the season, followed by Gerst. I'm an environmental engineer out of the regional office for the Forest Service in Missoula.
Is there just one of you, Bob, that does that, or?
Yeah, we're down to, it's my fault, can't pass the buck anywhere.
Well,
so.
thanks for coming out today.
It's my pleasure. Another thing that we would like to talk with you about, and this will be something that the county will want to work with the state, and Forest Service may have an interest in this, is the claims that made up that ASARCO portion in there are held by the ASARCO Trust. And the state and the trust would like, after the work has been completed up there, to change hands, or, I hate the word dispose because it's land and that has value, but they want to transfer ownership to some other entity. And they did approach the Forest Service, and I've been working with Carol to see, does the Forest Service have interest? But most of all, Carol has brought up that too, we need to have consultation with the county to see what their wishes are for such lands and how we would want to deal with that.
What's their motivation for not wanting any land?
They have to carry, for maintenance of, the upkeep of the land, and the trust is based on the settlement that they receive from ASARCO.
So it's not necessarily dodging liability in the future.
Well, not necessarily, no.
Well, let's see what he's saying.
No. It's basically, they have property there that, they do not see use as far as from an administrative standpoint where it'd be beneficial to the state.
What kind of upkeep on land when it's just sitting there? You mean weed spraying or what?
Basically being a private or a steward of that land, whether it's vegetation, like you say, weed spraying, or dealing with it from a fire perspective, or any gates, maintenance of access points into that. That is something they at this point would care not to have. Because the trust is based on the settlement funds, and when those funds are gone, they're gone, and there's no more additional funds. It either has to go into the state or some other, means. And I would, not to be a government person just to pass the buck, but if we need more in-depth information about that, I will ask the state about that.
ASARCO, their woes across the state of Montana, Butte, Anaconda, et cetera. I just
Right.
thought, wow, I almost wondered when their trust would dry up, actually.
Right. And in this case, the state did receive, funds specifically for the, the Iron Mountain Flat Creek site. So those are the funds which they are working on.
So there's a separate claim. This is a lower claim in here, and then there's an upper claim right here. And the added site is right there. Whatever you want to do, you want the Forest Sewers to take that one. Absolutely. Just give it to them, sign off on it. It's all yours.
I'm not trying to dissuade what's going on. I'm just trying to understand
Right.
how these things sometimes
Well,
seem
I
unusual.
mean, you're gonna get to add it if you take that.
Well, if we take it, and that's what we're talking about, what the lands, are in this package. There is an obligation for that added, and that's still classified as an NPL site by EPA.
But doesn't the trust have money for addressing the added?
They have some funding, but it's a 1 mile portal that goes to the mine working. So, that undertaking is going to be quite substantial.
But turn it into a little tour, like Lewis and Clark
But-
Cavern.
Does
State park.
the trust basically, they had a known quantity of funds for Iron Mountain.
Right.
Are they gonna be, we're gonna get into the mechanics of things. I know they're
Yeah.
gonna try to reserve money for operation of the repository.
The repository should be, yes, they do have the obligation under Superfund to, maintain the repository into perpetuity.
So some of their settlement funds are gonna be carved out for that.
Correct.
But is there a mechanism to say that the trust has to take the rest of that fund and expend it on that site?
Basically, those funds, and once again, that's a state settlement, that any funds that were from the Marietta, or the settlement of the Iron Mountain Flat Creek, are to be expended on that property. But, from my viewpoint on things, those funds are very limited and may not fully deal with the issue of the added, or the portal.
I don't think they will either. So.
Right, so, once again, it would fall under EPA as, their jurisdiction to deal with it. as well as, the state and that. So that's where that's at. The question comes, the Forest Service is being asked to say, do you want the lands that make up this patented piece of ground? But there comes the issue, and Carol, you can, kick me or, tell me if I'm wrong. We are also working under the assumption that, once again, does the value of going into federal ownership bring a value to the county, i.e. is a loss of revenue due to taxation on property? Does that benefit, the county enough where the county would like to have that revenue if it was to be sold to a private entity? Or is there any benefit to having the Forest Service take over that property?
In my opinion, no. It's like $600 worth of taxes. You're welcome. Thank you.
But it is just one of those things we would like to, make sure the county is involved in, weighing in on that discussion.
If it got developed, then there would be somewhat of a tax consequence to the county. But I'm not going to sit here and ever in good conscience and say somebody drill a well up there and try to tap a water source up there.
Unless it's above the Hull Gulch confluence where the, main contaminants.
Which is impossible to get to unless you deal with stream crossings and everything.
Well,
else.
yeah, but you're the landowner, and that's, it's your, property to deal with that, so.
Well, the other thing that I have stated to the DEQ and haven't had a direct conversation with the trust is that, if they ever thought about putting this out on the market, then there would, they can place all kinds of conditions on that and record them, and county can be a party to those conditions and be enforceable, so.
Yeah, that's true.
But we don't need those conditions if it gets transferred to the Forest Service.
Once again, restate that I'm here making sure that the county, and this government body has that information and has a right, to speak up and, help us during this time period.
Yeah. Well, you're right about, thanks for bringing it up, because we typically are a little bit sensitive to government agencies getting some land, and we unintended consequences. Ted Turner doesn't get to build his lodge there now, and then we lose. While it's only $600 now, we always worry about the potential that we could actually have growth. But I haven't seen the ground, but I guess if Tim says the liability is better to avoid than the $600, and
Well, but I think we can all agree that there's not going to be 100% cleanup of that property.
I would, especially when we're talking about the groundwater scenario up there, that is a long-term situation that would have to be dealt with.
does Jim Schultz have a well, Tim?
He does now.
Yeah.
Oh, huh.
But for 25 years, his water came right out of Flat Creek.
Oh,
I think they
no
still
wonder
use
he's
it.
so rowdy.
He still takes water out of Flat Creek and stuff, but
Yeah, he has water rights out of that, so.
Hmm.
And for future, just to let you know, the Forest Service, will be following through after the first phase of this removal action occurs with the remainder of removal within that portion of Flat Creek that you see in front of your map is segment 1. I have some funding to do a preliminary evaluation to actually see what would be the best way to remove that. I'm trying to develop some partnerships with entities like Trout Unlimited, who have been doing work down in the 9 Mile, actually having a local contractor here, to
The Kennedy Creek, or
correct. Yes, sir.
And they did the
He
Cedar
did
Creek
Cedar
as
Creek.
well.
Right. So the idea is, the portion that the state's doing, this is kind of a big hog and haul. You need heavy equipment, large equipment.
Mhm.
But to work in segment one, you're gonna need a light hand on the ground, smaller equipment. I have promised Carol to try to make the promise to all that we try to make sure that local contractors who probably are more equipped to handle the smaller, more, delicate areas in there, that we try to make sure that they have opportunities to those contracts.
We're trying to get as much as we can toward our county here.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And it has been expressed, I've been in several meetings, that I think the county or the population feels that, this, removals in here does not benefit the county. They have a sense of feeling, inconvenienced and not seeing necessarily a benefit of this action. One last thing too, and floating around, and I don't know if we want to bring them on, but I am working, and Tim's in a group regarding the water situation in Flat Creek, working with the Montana Bureau of Mines. I have them kind of looking in other areas to see if there is other potential sources of water, that could be developed for the community. We're working on that as well. Because Tim, I don't know, you have that water working group. I'm not sure, what their goals and objectives are, but I know there's one person on there that's concerned about using the infiltration gallery as an emergency water source.
Oh, from the DEQ side of things, which all of a sudden is now turned up after 20 years of having that agreement.
Is it
Justified by that.
A person in a new position, new person?
Yeah, I mean, it's a newer person than the DEQ, but
Yeah, that's,
it's like this light went off over there that, oh really, you could still get water out of Flat Creek and put it in the storage tank up there? And I'm like, yeah, right. I mean, it's always been that condition. I don't think they're not brave enough to reverse it right now, but they're questioning whether that would be a good idea. So I personally think that we haven't had any water tests on that water coming out of that diversion right now for so long. We don't know what's coming out of there. I don't know. It might be antimony free. There might be something else in it, but there might not be any antimony in it. So.
But to reiterate, the Forest Service is committed to maintaining, that infiltration, making sure that we do not do anything that requires the removal of that infiltration gallery.
Well, and on the water thing, I that's why I asked Ronnie to be here, but it was interesting to me because we were at the council meeting the other night and they were going through things, but Brenda, the clerks, they spend $24,000 a year on electricity for the pumps, so. And that's really pretty much everything getting pumped up the hill
Yeah.
and stuff, so if you're talking a known funding that you have out there and everything else, and we could at least investigate and see if there's a possibility of running it downhill instead of running it uphill. I still think it's viable to take a look at.
Well, that's all I had, Carol.
So one of the things about the Sarco Trust land, currently the Lolo National Forest, we don't have that on our schedule to try to acquire that. And so if it would be the county's recommendation that it become National Forest land, we would need to get that because our land acquisition isn't quick. And we would need to identify it and get it on a schedule and see if we could bump that up into some kind of priority or whatever, because at present, it wouldn't be a piece of ground that we're particularly, it's not significant
Sought after.
critical habitat or a wetland or something that the forest would be particularly trying to acquire.
And that's probably why they wouldn't be interested in a trade. Get some other land opened up elsewhere, because it's probably really not something they want to begin with.
Yeah, that would be correct, Roman.
Mhm.
So
So-
Tim, why doesn't the state want to retain ownership of it?
The state didn't get it.
It's in
The
that.
Sarco was a slick operator maneuver. They said, you take the deeds with everything, but we're putting all the money into a trust account, because Sarco said, we want to make sure that the state is going to spend the money on the projects, not just go into a state funding mechanism where somebody can tap into it and stuff. So they set it in this trust account over here, and the trust account is specifically tasked with cleaning up the 7 sites that they received the settlement monies for and stuff. So let's do that. But, I mean, in the long term, this trust, I don't know what's gonna happen with Iron Horse Mike and some of the other properties that,
No, I don't either.
but I mean, the trust did get additional properties in this settlement and stuff. So at some point in time when they're remediated, I'm sure that they don't wanna be sitting around having the property and stuff. And then, you know, is that a really outside liability for them to have that property? You know, I mean, the Forest Service is kind of the Forest Service, but having somebody go up there and messing around on a piece of property that they think is sitting in this trust and they got money, who knows? They might try to take a shot at them for something that happened up there. But I just think that the overall management of it and do that. But I'm gonna also suggest to you that we put a notice in the paper and have a public meeting about this and see who's
People
interested
think.
in it.
Yeah.
But we'll have to be a little bit careful about that time, because obviously the people that should be notified and have something to say about it are the 2 residents that live up there and stuff. And obviously Alan Amborman's not gonna be back here until April on something, so we wouldn't have that meeting
Yeah.
in a while, but we'll put it in the works. And
Yes, and this is just preliminary. It's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
we've heard this, you know, and we thought now's the time to bring it forward ahead of time before anybody gets caught off guard or any surprises.
And not wait till the last minute and then
Yeah.
try to start with the process.
Right, so do our part and do our due diligence and stuff, and let the public wants to weigh in on it, then fine.
So what happens to it if, say, the Forest Service can't come up with funding to purchase it? What happens to it then?
Then I don't know, trust will probably try to dispose of it and see if somebody's willing to pay them for it. But, I mean, otherwise they'd just be sitting on it too, so.
What time is it?
I guess it would be interesting. Forest Service would appraise it?
If it were, we have to appraise it if.
You have to
if-
appraise it, don't you, by your
Yes,
rules?
Yes.
if it's
So-
coming into the Forest Service, you know, system, it has to be appraised.
I don't, you know, I suppose the trust could decide to sell it to somebody for $10 if they wanted to,
And that is their right, probably.
just to divest themselves of it and stuff. So, I mean, there can't be any special requirement that they would have to appraise it and get market value, do anything else like that. They can just say, they want to get rid of this piece of property. And, you know, the long claim down by the creek, that's one thing, but that claim with the old added on it, like, oof, don't want to see that in private owner. I mean, nobody in their right mind and good conscience would buy it, because you become the responsible party, so.
Well, mining company, right?
Yeah, that's true, they might. I mean, if you talk to Lane, is it Jack Lane?
Definitely.
Jack Lane and stuff, he said there was enough commercial silver laying in that horizontal drift that it would be worth mining it now.
I didn't know, too.
Is that Jack Lane that lived out here on South
Yeah.
Side?
He was pretty much the last person besides Ev Schultz-Dad that worked in that mine, and there was 3 of them that worked that last 5-6 years in there.
I didn't know
He
Jack
told me,
did. I knew Scully
all
did.
about that, and he says, 887 feet, there's a a different type of drift and everything else. You go back in there 887 feet and put in a wall like that, and the water will never come out of there again. So. I'm like, oh, interesting. But yeah, he was there when they tapped the, no, he wasn't. He had talked to somebody that had tapped the rock between the vertical drift and the horizontal drift. Because
Interesting.
they thought that thing was just gonna blow out
Blow
of there and
out.
stuff like that. So all they did was took a drill rod and pushed it through there. And he said the water ran out for about a half a day, and yeah, no big deal. So the water didn't go up in the vertical
Shaft.
shaft.
Yeah.
It didn't rise up or anything like that. The water that they were encountering was at that lowest level down there. So I don't know if I haven't ever found out that they actually ever pumped water out of that when everything came out the top. There's no evidence that they ever ran a pump, system down there or anything like that, so.
So maybe when you schedule the public meeting, if you could let me know in advance, it might be good to have Bob present at that, so he could answer some questions, so we could, know when you do get that scheduled.
Have you talked to any of the trust people?
And that's what I was going to say. I'd prefer too if we invite people from the trust or the state, because, once again, I'm on the fringe of things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of involvement here, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there
Right.
is.
So coordinate a meeting with trust people and DEQ people and
Right.
get that on the schedule. Hit 'em up.
So if we could, get it out, so we could get people
Yeah.
scheduled.
You said Amborn's not back till April, so
Yeah, he thought, that's what he,
so what do you think a May meeting would be good? Springtime when people are back?
well, yeah, or just, we'll put out the feelers and talk to Amborn and see when he's gonna be back here, so. I don't know, I don't think they're gonna have enough snow off the ground to do road work before he gets back here. But Montana civil contractors have been really good. I mean, they've had conversations with Alan and Ev, and Jim got radios and everything else, so they really trying to work with them.
Good.
Fortunate that Jim is getting along with them real well right now. So
Yes.
just see what car Ev gets out of the whole thing. It'll be fine.
Well, thank you, Bob,
Yeah,
for
thank you
coming
folks for your
down.
time
Thank you.
today, appreciate it.
Yeah, we're here 10:30 with the Pioneer Council Fleet.
Pioneer Up,
Expansion.
yeah, we got a great showing. We weren't sure how many were gonna be able to make it.
Huh? So I know Patty, I know Monty, now I know Lynn. And what's your name,
I'm
ma'am?
Lori.
What's your last name?
Lori Philo.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Michael Bowen.
Bowen, okay. And you, Lori, Dwayne.
Yeah, I believe I'm friends with you on Facebook.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Can't hurt.
Okay.
I just see stuff pop up every now and then.
It's never nothing too fanatical.
No, I just
Maybe anti-government a lot, but anti-federal government.
Yeah,
Anti-federal.
there you go.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
counties.
You can't be totally anti-government, what he says. All right, so we got some kind of a proposal going here, Monty, or what's the?
What we have done, you want me to just kind of lead in? Okay, Lynn's got it up here, that's why she drove up from Missoula to help us out. Public transportation, we have our bus. We've got our bus and it's on routes and it's been working.
Lori's one of our drivers.
Lori's one of the
Oh.
drivers. Well, I think we have about 4 or 5 drivers like that, and it's been going well. And what we don't have is individual taxi service, for lack of a better word. We don't have it because we've never had the money to do it. Well, we all know that there is a need for. I need a ride to the grocery store and back. I'd like to go play bridge with the girls and get a ride back. And our neighbors and our friends and our family, they all help out. And still sometimes we're stranded. We don't have one. The hospital discharges people. They don't have a ride. We can't legally put them in our personal vehicle and drive them any place. I haven't done that before.
Yeah.
So,
And so then I get the phone call in dispatch saying, she's been discharged, it's, 5 a.m. in the morning, I have, don't have a deputy that can give them a ride home. So
Who
that
can't
happens a lot.
Monty, I know that like lots of people I've had in wrecks from the hospital, a nurse or somebody will end up taking, when we had a bus station, they give them a ride to the bus station, they give them a ride to the motel. Because by the time I might get called to another wreck, so I couldn't get them to the motel or wherever they need to go. So what part were you saying is illegal? Because I know a lot of people do that.
insurance,
Yeah.
Whose insurance?
our individual insurance.
Oh, your State Farm on your Buick won't.
Well, but Ron, it's a policy of the hospital.
Oh, okay.
That's really where this boils down to. And the prior administration just turned a blind eye. And Ron does now and then when he knows that we're just up against the wall.
However, speaking of our love for the federal government, contained within the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, there is a prohibition of any medical facility paying for rides to or from their facility because the federal government believes they're enticing service. So that's another reason why they can't. So we've got some solutions to that, but that's another reason why they can't do that.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
I read more than you do.
I know you do. I got to have a book with a lot of pictures. So
You and me both.
So there is a need for, I'll say, private transportation, individual transportation. With that, I'm going to turn over to Lynn and let her tell you about her background, who she works with and how she is involved with the Pioneer Council, and what we have the opportunity to do with the help of Michael Bowen, who's stepped up to the plate here too. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
So
I
Lynn,
want,
you're from Missoula?
yes.
And Mr. Bowen, where are you from?
Here in town.
Oh, okay.
And, well, in Missoula, part of my job is to run the iRide van pool. We've got like 24 routes that serve, not up here yet, but serve the area. It's for commuters trying to get to work. That's basically what we do, although we'll give an occasional one-way. The other half of my job is the executive director of the Montana Transit Association. And since the Pioneer Council is a member of that, I was asked, 5 years ago or so, to come and help them with a mess that was kind of going on.
So when the hospital had the bus that we shouldn't have had to begin with, that we didn't know what we were doing with. So help.
Yeah. So I've come in and helped them with their grants and all this kind of stuff. And at one of the meetings, well, a little while ago, they were talking about somebody seeing a gentleman that was discharged from the hospital in Superior walking home to St. Regis. So we said, okay, what can we do? So I have a gentleman in Missoula that has Kurt's transmission. He's got cars that people have fixed but they can't pay for. So he has agreed to donate a vehicle to us to deal with this issue, to do the short stuff. So Michael, we've been trying to help him apply for PSC authority to operate a cab company. That donated vehicle will be leased to him for $1 a year. And since this is just starting up, a way to, let's say, control the costs initially to make sure that this is a viable business is, since that vehicle is going to be donated to the Pioneer Council, we were hoping that you would let us put that on the insurance policy that our bus is on. If we need to step up and pay that additional premium, I'm sure we can find federal money to do that. But this is just, a way to get this program started. If it is viable, then at some point, hopefully in 2 years or so, Michael will then take that vehicle off the insurance pay for it himself and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying real hard to come up with a way to help people that don't have a way to get to the clinics, and although because of the funding we can't restrict it to only medical appointments, but that's the main crux of why we're trying to get this done. And Michael also went and applied for a grant with
The Lake County Community
Development.
Development.
Yeah.
that is covering the cost of applying for the PSC authority. So,
Does it require PSC authority only if you're gonna be kind of, like you said, making it a business, or is it?
well, it's a cab service.
Right.
So, yeah.
Whether it's governmental, whether it's free of charge those folks or not, it's still under the,
Well, in order to make it viable, we're gonna have to he's gonna have to charge
okay,
fares.
so that's
Yeah.
why you have to go through the PSC.
Yeah.
Well, and with the state of Montana, if you're gonna carry 7 or less passengers, you still have to have a state endorsement or a certificate in order to transport anybody from, say, the hospital to the motel or whatever, just so if you get pulled over, you're not getting in trouble with all that.
7 or more, you said?
7 or less, and then when you go, because the Class B certificate covers 7 or less, and the Class A is 16 to 31.
Well, and I think maybe where you're heading with that question is why don't we just have him work for the Pioneer Council? The issue with that is right now all these guys volunteer to drive, and if we pay one driver,
Right.
the rest are gonna wanna be paid, and we just don't have the money to do that.
And then, okay. And you're sure, that was recent? I haven't looked up the code lately, but I thought that 7 or less, I mean, 'cause there's a whole bunch of rafting companies and stuff that they have people hauling people in vans back and forth.
That was the way it was. I understood it when it was explained to me from Brenda. With
at
the
PSC.
Oh, really? Oh, maybe PSC has different rules than, because we have people doing shuttles for veterans and everything else, and I've never heard them having to have the Class B before.
Well, and the shuttle stuff may fall under the VA, which is a totally different animal that we don't really
Yeah.
want to even discuss.
Yeah, and the DAV is just for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking them to veteran doctor appointments and.
But
That's
if
it.
somebody, if you're saying that the state or wants to have a driver's license that's Class B, on the side of the road, the GVW guy or the cop isn't gonna care. He's just gonna look at how many passengers are in the rig.
Oh, and Federal Motor Carrier does 8 and more. For
Yeah.
what they call, God, it's not fares, I can't remember the terminology that they used, I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, I was hoping that you guys wouldn't have to follow the
PSC.
stringent rule he's referring, because I've never heard of that unless you are over
Well,
8 or more on those.
And the Pioneer Council doesn't, because it's funded through the Montana Department of Transportation. We fall under FTA rules. And where these guys are volunteer drivers, that removes some of the restrictions. But, somebody needs to be paid to do this. And I believe this year, and don't quote me on this, the Department of Transportation has allocated the Pioneer Council, I think it's about right around $4,500 to do their whole transportation program.
That's always been the issue that's why we
Yeah.
put them under our umbrella.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that low, but
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds about right by what I looked
Yeah.
at our balance sheet.
We did get a bus on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well, and that's the other thing, at some point, we're gonna have to replace that
I
bus.
was just gonna ask how many miles it was on it.
Boy, I wish Dennis was here. You remember?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Lori's usually drinking so dang much when she's driving, it's just like.
But, another bus, the match on that is between $8,000 and $10,000. So, it's just, we're trying to create this community service and,
Yeah.
trying to think out of the box to get it done.
What the hospital, I haven't really talked with Ron much about this. He knows that I'm working in this capacity. when we have patients that are discharged, I have no money, and this is pretty common. We will have a voucher program where we will give that patient a voucher to give to Michael. Michael will turn it in. We will have a pool of money that we will give to Lynn. This pool of money probably will be by like $500 to get going, and basically that money's going to come from three providers and a couple of nurses who have come to me and said, what can we do about getting people rides home at 2 a.m? Deputies can't, and so forth like this. We'll pitch in. We just don't want them sitting in our waiting room all night long.
Yeah, they're not feeling good. And
Yeah.
And he's
Wanna go
also
home.
Want to go
applied
home.
they can't
for
walk
authority if
13
they're,
miles or-
you know, if, let's say, they're a community medical center. They're part of this voucher program as well that's administered by the Transit Association.
Yeah, in Clark Fork Valley too.
They could use Michael to get them home here as well.
And,
Or, you know.
well, within Mineral, Sanders, Lake Flathead, Powell, and Lewis and Clark is what I've applied for to cover in case, you know,
The Fort
say-
Harrison.
Say the DAVs, they're not around because they've already left for the day and somebody else needs to go up to Helena for a VA appointment. I can cross between counties without getting in trouble.
Right.
Oh, cool.
What kind of rig are you thinking of getting?
It's gonna be like a little sedan,
Uh-huh.
easy on gas and
And I don't know if you know, but Michael is in our EMT class right now, and he also drives the ambulance for us when we only have one EMT around. So he's been doing a lot of volunteering for the county already.
Well, if Lynn's already covered the PSC thing, that was my only, what was going to be my question, you already addressed it.
That's so over my head, that's, well, and our chair, Pat Liston couldn't make it apparently, so, because she's our chair, Lynn's our vice.
Mhm.
And those really are the two officers, everybody else is.
So how long do you think you want to run under our umbrella before, I guess we'll just revisit that and,
I would say if we could revisit it maybe annually,
okay?
that would be good.
Mhm.
You know, 1 year we should probably, we'd have our feet on the ground
Okay.
to see what we're doing with this.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely see the need. You didn't have to convince me much on that.
I think it's a cool idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for your volunteering.
not a problem.
Yeah.
All of you, yeah.
It's always been fun.
Well, I would make a motion that we, if we're done with the discussion.
Yeah, any other questions from the audience? The news reporter?
Well, it's you're talking about the county vehicle insurance? Is that what you're talking?
Yeah, the Pioneer Council currently has their bus under our umbrella.
Okay.
That's, I don't know if you've seen that on the highway. It's a bus that once a week takes the people that can't drive to Missoula or.
Take them to Walmart or wherever they need to
Doctor
go.
appointments.
and
Yeah.
Doctor
Then bring them
appointments.
back.
That was acquired through an MDT grant back,
How long,
when I was first commissioner.
Really?
One of the first things, yeah.
Like 08.
Yeah, wait.
Yeah.
okay,
And I
Okay.
guess that's the other thing that we really didn't touch on, which I'm sure you've already assumed, is when that bus is out of Missoula, is out to Missoula, he'll be here to do local
Oh,
rides
cool.
that they're not doing right now. So it's kind of a service expansion too, and I guess we're kind of waiting to see how it goes. MDT does have a pool of money set aside for service expansion. So we'll be looking to that, probably seeing how this goes in a year, to apply for that.
And then this will be, Michael will be available to whether the person lives at Saltese or Alberton or in between.
Anything from, well, just about Idaho to the
Okay.
Mineral County line will be covered when, like, you know, if they're already gone, that'll be covered so people can
Who
still get
will they
around.
call, like if somebody missed the opportunity on the DAV or the Pioneer bus and they've got, okay.
They'll call him.
And
directly.
Yeah.
The vehicle will be housed at your place or where?
Yeah.
Yeah, I commend you because not too many young people get gratification and feel reward from helping elderly folks, so thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyway, I would make that motion to approve, put them under our insurance umbrella for 1 year and then look, revisit it in a year and see where we're at.
I'll second that.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay.
So just,
So-
just probably get the
Get the vehicle.
information and
Yeah.
to Casey and then
Yeah.
she can.
I gotta go back to work. Okay.
Okay, thanks for
Thank you.
making it.
One of those to Ronnie.
Just a question that I have to kind of get this on my calendar. Would it be better if we came in at like this time every year to work it into your budgets? Or is there a better time for us to come back to revisit this?
Well, it's not gonna be a huge budget expense.
hope not.
So a year from now would be fine. Just
Okay.
when it turns a new year. I
If it
guess
is,
we'll-
we may have you back here next week.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think,
Monty,
Yes.
Dennis and Cheryl are here.
Oh, they are?
Maybe Dennis has the mileage.
Yeah.
These are two members, Dennis and Cheryl Christensen.
They're
They're
both
both
drivers.
drivers.
Oh,
Oh, and board members.
Wow.
And Dennis also works on the bus, so we don't.
what's on
Doing
the
the
what?
oil changes. He does the oil changes and that kind of stuff on the bus as well, to save us money.
I know it. Cheryl just came back. Cheryl, Dennis Christensen,
Hello.
and a couple of our drivers. She just flew in from
Hello.
Arizona. She's been down there at a rehab center.
It might have been more fun.
You're looking pretty good. It's a rough road for a while, but she's back. How many miles are on the bus?
What?
The bus.
Yeah.
How many miles?
Odometer.
About the odometer.
73, 74, somewhere 1,000.
Really? Okay.
Oh, that's good.
I thought it was more than that. Okay. Because that was a question. Okay.
He's 10 years old.
yeah,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
yeah, see how it's bar?
Yeah.
Yeah, and those usually, FTA on the buses, useful life is 7 years or 150,000 miles, so.
We're utilizing the bus. There's parameters of how we can use that. It can't be for a private party.
Yeah, charter bus.
Charter
Can't
bus, that's
be
what I
with
do.
Charter bus or school
Go to the
bus.
Grizz game, yeah.
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 But we're using it, we did last year, we're gonna use it this year also for the hiking group that we're putting together through the hospital. Because if somebody's on the road and need a ride, hey, yeah, no problem. So we're gonna be using it there, and there's some other there was some other talk of using it, getting it out a little bit more. People are aware of it, but
They use it at the fair.
yeah, that's true. So we're getting some use out of it here.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, very, very much.
Yeah.
So now we can tell Kurt that
Yep.
everything's good, so we
We need-
move forward.
Yep, we need to know what the vehicle is.
And tell
We can
Kurt
call
thank you.
Casey.
Yeah, because we'll like need
Yeah.
the VIN number, et cetera.
Oh, yeah, we'll get you
Yeah,
everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
All right. How are you, Gypsy?
I'm good. It's hard to
Good.
believe this is my third time around. I've been here for 2.5 years, so it's pretty crazy. I was thinking about the first time I came with Billy, and the second time I came by myself, and here I am. Today they just waved and said goodbye, so I guess I've got it
You're on
figured
your
out.
I was gonna say, we just came back from Mako, so I
Oh,
got to visit with Bill Barron for a while. It sounds like you've got some headaches, so you probably got your work cut out trying to
we have our
fill
work
in the
cut out
void
for
of all the
us.
money issues up there with the dam and
The loss of tax revenue for sure.
revenue, and then
And
the
then the
battle
jail.
with the public
Yeah.
law 320 or whatever.
280, yeah.
280, yeah.
And I watched KPAX last night, and they did a special on meth and Polson,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that's great. So we
They did a special. Was it a good sale?
Yeah, they came and got them all. No.
Yeah.
But really, it's a lot of unfortunate things happening at the same time. You know,
Yeah,
an overcrowded
yeah.
jail, and then they literally said on the news, well, if you're caught with paraphernalia, there's nothing we can do to you. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
don't tell them that.
Yeah, I know, why do they put in,
Yeah. I mean,
We've
it's,
dealt with that here,
Yeah.
not the, in the drug, but
yeah,
have law enforcement go out there and say, oh, we're only here from 9 to 5.
right. Or we only have 46 beds. And
yeah, but I understand your jail is so full that there's felony warrants that
Yeah.
they know where the felon is, they just can't go get him because there's no one.
hundreds and hundreds of them, exactly. So big problems along with tax shortfall, as I'm sure they talked about. And then, there's a new housing development coming in that's a tax credit housing project
Oh.
that also doesn't pay taxes. So as
Right.
much as it's great to have the housing, then, you have another
Yeah,
tax burden.
so you get a big housing complex with more people and more problems, but no tax revenue for the law enforcement response that it requires.
Yep, and the roads and the schools and
Right.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah, so but we do have some business growth happening in Lake County, so that's great. So we do have a little
So
bit of growth.
you've been doing your job.
We've been doing our jobs, yes, for
Well,
sure.
that's good to hear, the business growth.
Yeah, definitely. We're actually in our county having to work on increasing our loan portfolio because we've loaned out all our dollars, so that's great.
We're in the same boat, and we're
Yeah.
sending them your way,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
we're just about there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
what,
So
is there any way to get more of that
Oh, yeah.
funding when you,
we're putting two in to increase our portfolio by $1 million to their grant loans to us that then we loan out and pay back with the interest we earn, and so we're doing that over the next 6 weeks. Because, and that's good that there's a demand. We want that. And we want new businesses and we want, that's where we get our earned income. And so it's a good thing. It's just none of us know what it's going to look like at the federal level and what funding's going to be available and all that kind of stuff. So I did hand out to you our 2016 annual impact report. It's just a mini version that just kind of highlights the impact we make in the region. And we'll talk a little bit about us and Mineral County and how we work together as we go through this. But basically, the meeting today is to, I actually have a slide that says this, but basically to inform the public about the different funding options that are available for projects, infrastructure, housing, and economic development, and actually then to identify potential projects that might be coming up in the next year. This while I run the mouse from up here, if I can find the mouse. There it is. Okay. So this is our mission at Lake County Community Development. Obviously, our name is always confusing when we show up here because it looks like we only serve Lake County, but we actually have a title of Western Rural Development Region. We serve Lake, Mineral, Sanders County, and the Flathead Indian Reservation. So our role as a community development organization, and then also the role of the Mineral County, is for project development, capitalization for planning and construction, and project oversight and administration. So any of the projects that are identified today often go through an economic development agency, community development agency at some point in the process. Let's see if we can make this work. There we go. So there are the three types of community development we're going to talk about today are infrastructure, and we talk about this every year. Roads, sewer, water, broadband, public facilities, to name a few. Housing that supports workers, so affordable housing commensurate with the pay scales they'll be earning. We've, for years, talked a lot about low-income housing and the need for low-income housing, but what we're facing in at least the other counties that we've done our hearings at, workforce housing, affordable workforce housing is what we're facing. Lots of teachers.
When you do that, do you compete with like the HRC, is your project tax exempt?
Well, in this case, it would be working with the HRC
okay.
in your area because that is your local housing agency. In Lake and Sanders, they have their own.
Okay.
And then economic development, so obviously opportunities available for professions, careers in the industries. Things we like to remind everybody about is when you're doing any sort of a grant application, each of them has their own eligibility criteria, so it's important to pay attention to that. Even grants that are considered non-competitive are competitive. What that means is you still have to meet all the basic requirements and write a good grant, even if you're not competing with another person for funding, so to qualify for the grant. Planning and public input are elements of scoring criteria in most grant projects, and This today serves as a first public hearing on the requirements of a lot of those grants, most specifically CDBG. So if CDBG grant projects are identified today, this will serve that purpose. And then we ask for input relative to the projects and need that's critical to all of the applications that may go through beyond this today. So this is not a great slide. It has a whole bunch of text. I would really appreciate if Kevin would just do a quick highlight on our project we did with Superior Meats, because that's a really good example of an infrastructure project.
Well,
'Cause
these
it's
guys-
done.
These guys have heard it ad nauseum.
Okay,
So
so
over
yay.
the last however long, and so anyway, it was the three-phase project that brought three-phase to the airport. And in that process, it came by Superior Meats, which was able to immediately access three-phase power and upgrade their business. And I guess as a result of, it's completed, the final documents are done. Emily did a real good job of closing it out. Her first submission went through with no flags in it.
Fantastic.
And so, as a result of that project, I just forwarded Superior Meats to Lake County Community Development for an expansion loan, because we don't have enough money to lend to them in our revolving loan fund, and he's wanting to expand. So this is a product, or the new loan is a product of this project here, so.
So we're going to put that on the list anyway, because we're actually thinking this might be a potential project together to secure new CDBG funds and replenish your loan fund with
That'd be
it.
nice.
So we talked about that in our at our organization. So the good thing is we've done one and it's successful and closed, and that makes it eligible to go in for another. And to hear any growth in Mineral County is exciting to us because last year when we were here, it was like, you know, not a lot of growth, lots of need.
All heck has broke loose here lately. I mean, just in terms of people requesting funds or asking about loan funds. And I had a meeting this morning with another one, and then we had a call while I was in that meeting with another one. So, I mean, people are thinking that way. They're
Yeah.
willing to,
That's really
it seems
exciting.
like they're willing to take a risk now where before it's.
So we're looking at trying to increase our fund.
Well, we're getting
fund-
down, we're getting down to the point where we won't have any more to lend.
Well, that's what I mean. She
And
said they're the same, but
so
they're
then when I can't lend or handle the size of the loan, I call Lake County and visit with John Weingart over there. And then they figure out what pot to pull from what to make what work for whomever. And they basically run the loan through there. We can provide some of the on-the-ground stuff here in terms of, like we did with that previous, Gypsy started out doing the monitoring and all that kind of thing, and then it would just got to be too much. And so we picked up and had some final forms filled out, and we'll do more jobs, confirmation type stuff, just checking in with the business and then file the documents with Commerce. And that happens even after you close out for a little bit, so.
Will you be looking to increase your loan fund?
We'd love
anytime?
to, yeah. I mean, that would be, if we go after another CDBG, because that's where ours came from initially, we've never gotten RD money or any other form of money. It's all been repayment of community
So
development
your
block
revolved
grants.
CDBG
Yeah.
funds, okay.
And
Yeah.
so,
Do you think we have a good chance if we want to increase that? If
I
Kevin
think-
looks to do that, is it?
I think CDBG, yes. I think that the most difficult thing with our other sources of funding, which are USDA, IRP, and RMAP funding, they're nationally competitive. And so, you know, when we're thinking about going in to expand our loan portfolios, we'd be competing against each other in that case.
Oh.
So in this case, it's better for us to support
Yeah.
Oh,
programs
okay.
in Mineral County with those larger pots of money
Right.
and work to build the CDBG
Okay.
loan fund. Now, we will
Well, even-
absolutely be open to, if you wanted to pursue IRP or RMAP.
no, I've stayed away from it simply because your application is stronger than ours because you have a larger demographic area. They're looking at 3 counties and all of those stats that go with it. And besides that, RD money's a pain in the.
Too many stipulations.
There's a lot to it.
It is.
It is an awful lot of recording, there's an awful lot of, you pay heavily for that money. And these guys are set up to pay heavily for that money, whereas
And-
we're not.
Right,
And
and
so,
the only way that it really works is to have multiple sources of funding to build a loan portfolio. So our max grant we can loan is $250,000. And sometimes that means a little bit of this and a little bit of that, different funding that we can marry together to make a project happen. So I definitely agree with Kevin. It's not easy, and it's, we're up to $3.2 million loan fund, and we'd like to be up to 4. So anyway, that hoping to increase that CDBG revolved loan would be
Because
good
that's,
for all
that's
of us.
what we've used and that's what's worked for us,
Right.
is that,
I was just thinking, in light of what you said, with a lot of people calling you,
Well,
it'd be nice to find a way to increase.
so
the-
far, there hasn't been, no, there isn't any money.
That's what
So
we
far,
increased
Lake
the
County's
fund.
been able to, kind of come in and they're able to fund it in some form or fashion. And so have we, but this demand we've had is just since January. I mean, it was dead quiet prior to that. You couldn't find,
Well, this Trump pump is affecting mineral
Well,
value.
attribute it to whatever you want. People are looking over the fence and they're starting to figure it
Yeah.
out. So, I mean, we're seeing some things begin to shift. There's an optimism where before there was apathy, let's put it that way.
I agree. I
So-
think we're starting to come out of it, and mineral of the 3 is typically third in line, to come through. But to hear that there's growth, or at least demand for growth, is really exciting. Really good. Okay. So, in a lot of the funding agencies, and I'm going to talk briefly about a whole bunch of funding opportunities in this meeting, and not go into every little detail because a lot of them change based on once the notice has come out and that kind of thing. So I'll talk about them, but I would encourage you to either work with Kevin and Emily or work with us if you are going to pursue some sort of a grant to make sure that you know all the requirements, because these are just an overview. Most of these applications require a uniform application, which means it's a standard application for a lot of different sources, which is great if you're going to pursue multiple grants for a project. There's always a narrative that you actually have to discuss your what funds you're asking for and what you're going to use them for. Many of the infrastructure grants require preliminary engineering reports, and we'll talk a little bit about the architecture reports and feasibility studies as well. We always encourage people to respond to the specific criteria and then pay attention to the priorities. So oftentimes your poverty level or other census data makes you eligible for something and gets more points than another application might. So several of the programs we're going to talk about include TSEP. This is a biannual competition. Basically, in the world of TSEP, if there is a TSEP grant somebody is looking for, and again, this is roads, bridges, sewer, water, broadband, that kind of project, you contact the Department of Commerce ahead of time. They really want to know that you're thinking about a grant before you ever submit a grant. They have maximum grants of $750,000. They can be limited depending on user rates, and this is back to talking to the actual agency as you start to say, what are we eligible for? And they send you back to do some homework on usage rates and things like that. TSEP requires dollar for dollar match, and they definitely require a preliminary engineering report. Again, in the world of infrastructure, hopefully that makes sense. The eligible applicants for TSEP are incorporated cities and towns, counties, including RSIDs where management is in place, consolidated governments, county water, sewer, solid waste districts, and tribal governments. This particular fund can be used for water and wastewater systems, sanitary and storm sewers, solid waste disposal, and separation systems and bridges. And what we're going to do at the end of this is we're just going through infrastructure right now. We'll talk about some of these grant funds, and then we're going to list the infrastructure needs of the area. Then we'll move on to housing, and then we'll move on to economic development. So CDBG, one that we were just talking about, Community Development Block Grant, is a fund of the Montana Department of Commerce. These are federal funds that come through the state. So it's important to know that because match money is limited when you have federal dollars. You often have to match them with non-federal dollars. CDBG can be used for planning, which is feasibility studies, PERs, PARs, and other planning documents, public and community facilities, for instance, a jail, a homeless shelter, some of those types of things.
St. Regis Senior Citizen Center, that's what this funded.
Economic development and housing, maximum amount of $450,000 with a 25% match. The grant cycle is in the spring. It's empty here because it hasn't been announced yet for these areas. The biggest thing about CDBG is it has to support a minimum of 51% low and moderate income families, and this area meets that, no doubt. And so, but if you're looking to actually build a facility that serves a population, it has to have that in the mix. If you're matching TSEP funds or using TSEP funds with CDBG, they have to be submitted at the same time or after. CDBG has to go in after TSEP. So lots of acronyms and rules, but want to make sure you know that. Eligible applicants for CDBG are incorporated cities and towns, 50,000, under 50,000, and also counties, consolidated city-county governments, and water and sewer districts sponsored by the county government. Of note for CDBG, only one eligible project can be put in by the applicant. So if the county were to approve and support a CDBG project, they can't put in another one until they've spent down to 90%. Spent down 90% of the grant.
So the money amount, you could have two if they were under 450?
No.
What are
It
they saying?
it kind of says it that way, but really it's one eligible project, unless
can
the
have
other
a-
one is spent down.
You can have one application that may include multiple projects, like
Oh.
in your infrastructure. So if you had multiple bridges, or you had St. Regis sewer plus something else, something that dealt with infrastructure.
Okay.
But as far as the other public facilities and economic development, normally you would only have one per application. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you can have a planning grant that's open, and all that means is you can't apply for a planning grant until that one's done. You can have an economic development grant, but you can't apply for, so you can have a planning grant, an infrastructure grant, and economic development, and all at once.
Right, and so the
Area.
part of the importance of this meeting and that comment is that if there were 3 CDBG projects put on the table today, the commissioners would actually have to identify the one priority project.
We ran into that.
Oh, yeah, I knew that. I was confused by that language.
Yeah.
450. I thought, oh, we could have one small one here,
Right.
another small one there.
Right, okay, yeah. So this is, again, a whole lot of text, but basically this just gives a little information about CDBG public and community facilities. I do like to read the little list, and I don't know if I from here, but basically the idea is that we're targeting LMI residents to provide direct benefits by improving or creating access to sustainable living environments for necessary services. They can actually be outside the area if they're actually going to serve that population. So again, you mentioned the senior center. Obviously, you have a large area and people are coming into the service area.
And this is the one where we run into problems on our community center or Fairborn, because it talks necessary or essential
Right.
services. And that's way down their list after they get done with
Right, that's
orphanages or
right.
you know,
Jails and
women's
orphanages.
shelters and senior centers and medical clinics. And the community center comes in way down that list. So, and they never ever have enough
Right.
funds to support all the projects. They'll fund the top 3 or 4. And luckily we were with the St. Regis Senior Center, we were able to document the need and the service that was provided and the meals and the foot care and all that kind of thing, to the point we were second for that year and we were able to fund it. But the fairgrounds, community center falls way below in terms of priority.
We'll talk about this in a little bit. What's happening in a lot of the communities that we serve, and tourism is actually where, I mean, the feasibility studies and things like that, planning documents can happen through CDBG or Big Sky Trust Fund, which we'll talk about, but then the actual pursuit, it seems like tourism is a better fit lately for things like fairgrounds, because that's what it is. So, again, depending what your fairgrounds is used for, but if it's typically used for people from the outside coming in to be entertained, it's more of a tourist activity. So Department of Natural Resources, again, this emphasis is on renewable resource projects, which I'm sure you can tell that that's natural resource is about. It's a biannual competition, $125,000 maximum grant project. Eligible applicants for this include political subdivisions of state, local, and tribal governments, including state agencies and universities, counties, incorporated cities and towns, conservation districts, irrigation districts, water, sewer, solid waste districts. We'll use again, this is to conserve, manage, develop, or protect Montana's renewable resources. That's basically the gist of it. Some public facility projects, including drinking water, wastewater, and solid waste development and improvement projects have received this funding before. Other renewable resource projects that have been funded include irrigation rehab, dam repair, soil and water conservation, and forest enhancement. So again, we're just touching on these, so if you're thinking of a project, make sure you mention it when we make our list. And remember that we'll, either Kevin and Emily or our office will help you dig in and truly eligible. State revolving loan fund. There are two state revolving loan funds. One is for water pollution control projects, wastewater and non-point source projects, and other for drinking water projects. Both provide programs that are below market interest loans to eligible Montana entities. So local governments, schools, sewer water districts, and fire districts can apply. If we have a project like that on the table today, we would also ask for prioritization so that the commissioners would prioritize one project over another because they require that in their application. Has to be entered on their priority list. So what we would do at the end of this meeting is we would let the state know that we had an application and it was given a priority. There isn't a funding cycle. It is a loan, so it's 20 years at 3.75 or whatever the current rate is set by the legislature. And disadvantaged communities qualify for a lower rate, which you are, well, your communities are considered in that situation. And then USDA has rural utility services. I didn't make this slide, so it's really tiny, but it's basically needed infrastructure or infrastructure improvements to rural communities. So water, wastewater treatments, electric power, telecommunication services, this has definitely come up in this meeting before about broadband and things like that. There are loans for the construction of public infrastructure. The grants are up to 75% of the project, open funding cycle, and then the loan is a 40-year loan, and it's basically 4%, but it can be adjusted based on the number of low-income households you have. So again, that's one of those things where we look at it, we call the agency, we talk through the project and see if it was a good fit and what those rates would be. Eligible applicants for this are counties and municipalities, water and sewer districts, cooperatives, nonprofit corporations and homeowners associations, and tribal government. So now is the time we can answer questions or and also list any of the infrastructure needs you see or any of the projects that have already been identified, so we can make sure and have those in our notes for anybody who's pursuing a grant. So I'm ready when you're ready.
Well, fairgrounds and
Yeah.
Superior Communities and two, they're looking at having to upgrade the bleachers for the timber and everything. What's the town of Superior got?
I'd love for somebody to build me a new swimming pool.
Do you have a current swimming pool?
We have one.
Uh-huh.
It was built in 1960.
Okay.
It's, for the last several years, we've been putting Band-Aids on split arteries, trying to keep that thing running. There's no point trying to repair it. We just yank it out of the ground and build a new one.
Okay. I haven't heard that one before, so that's good to hear. Anything else in the world of infrastructure?
State reasons, anything in there? The housing, the
Workforce housing?
workforce housing is still an issue.
Okay. I'll save that and put it on under housing. What we're hearing in a lot of communities is teachers, traveling nurses, you know, new businesses that don't have anywhere for somebody to live, that people are having to travel and leaving the community in which they're working to go home to live. Therefore, you know, they're not able to share, you know, their spending locally that supports your economy. So it keeps people from taking jobs, but it also keeps people from moving in. So, okay.
And we've had some low income, you know, not really low income.
Yeah, they don't meet the low income criteria to have the low income housing, but
Right.
You can't
There's-
afford the market.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
well, there is really no market
No, there really
right
isn't.
now. I mean,
If you find
they
one,
used
it's
to be,
usually-
yeah.
Mhm. One of the models that, we're actually having a conference next, or in 2 weeks, about cooperatives, and one of the big things that's coming up is cooperative housing. Really popular model where people come together and buy a piece of land and put their houses on it, and everybody owns the land together and owns the community together, and then shared gardens and shared, things. And we actually have one in Pablo. And we didn't develop it, but we have literally a cooperatively owned housing area or suburb, and that's really one of the things people are starting to look at. We have somebody brought up at our public hearing in Lake County, mini house cooperative, those tiny houses that are all 800 square feet or whatever or less, where there's a lot of aging, not ready for assisted living or that kind of thing, but aging singles needing and wanting to live in sort of a community with shared opportunities like playing cards and meals and gardening and things like that. So we have a cooperative development center in our agency, and so we're working with them to figure out, is it possible? What does it look like? Banks aren't used to it, but it can be done. So you never know. All right, anything else on infrastructure?
What about Alberton, town of Alberton sewer, water?
I don't know. I was gonna go to town council meeting and next to that one. What do you think, Tim? Because I can't think of anything on top of my head that I've heard of down there.
Well, they're certainly starting to look at their water system. That's probably their newest priority. They had the sewer upgrade that just got completed about 2 years ago. That was a $370,000 project, so their sewer should be in fairly good shape as far as the lagoon mechanics and that. Their in-town infrastructure is really suffering. They need to do some upgrading and maintenance in there, but
Is
their
that
water
roads or
system is in
buildings?
a,
Or in the town, is that roads or buildings, or what is it that's?
the
crumbling?
sewer infrastructure
Oh,
in town.
in town sewer.
Yeah.
How about I heard a bunch of houses froze up in the cold snap. That wasn't due to any faulty water pipes. That was mainly just the weather. Or they need to
Yeah, it was.
They need to
All the
dig
faulty 52 connections run up the street that nobody had any idea of where this line goes to that line to this line, and they're out there trying to shut off lines so that they can stop the spray inside the place, and they keep shutting off lines and the water doesn't turn off. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Did you call Howard?
Yeah, call Howard.
He knows where everybody.
Howard has a little bit of an attitude.
Yeah, he does. He earned it.
Hence the reason he carried a 6-gun on his hip everywhere he went at work.
Jim, have you talked with St. Regis Sewer? Have they got anything online? haven't talked to
I don't
anybody
think
about-
they have anything right now because they supposedly got the third cell lagoon upgraded and put that thing into line and stuff. One question I was gonna ask though is that if an individual that wanted to tap into the St. Regis sewer system and put in a small unit subdivision and try to be mindful about affordable housing, could he get a loan for that sewer system installation? Would that be something that we could try to facilitate?
That's interesting. So the individual infrastructure.
What kind of a either or situation. If he sells lots, the loan gets paid off. If he
Right.
doesn't sell lots, he can amortize that out over a while until he does, so.
Sure. We'll look into that and find out what would be eligible. They're either through our organization or going to one of these sources specifically. I'm sure there's something that we can find out, so we will do that.
So streets and roads in Superior, streets and
That's-
roads in St. Regis?
That's Kelly and Gaines, their problem and stuff.
We're-
So. The
Right.
project that, I'm gonna have to be a little bit careful about my wording here because we're really trying to get the first part of our, what we call South Side Road, no man's land, because the town technically has the responsibility. The county doesn't have overt responsibility, but the state
hacks it and won't maintain it, so we're trying to get that almost mile section of road rehabbed and rebuilt, but it's turned into quite a issue on things like that. But that's kind of a sidebar thing, because county has a little money, the town gets the road taxes for it, so we're trying to facilitate some things like that. But just in general, the road maintenance in Superior, or in St. Regis, is just gonna continue to be a problem. The really incredible challenge out there is that you're sitting on several turn-of-the-century surveys for the lots and the boundaries, and really to tell where everybody is and what encroachments are out there and who, what's, and everything else, you need a pretty aggressive, updated survey of that whole area out there. And man, if there was some way to fund something like that, that would.
There definitely is. I mean, that's planning, and that could be a potential. There's a couple of these different CDBG potentially, and Big Sky Trust Fund potentially to look at some of that, the planning before, dig out the maps and get an updated plan so people knew. It sounded like that might have been the case in Alberton too. We don't know where things are connecting, so we'll look at that one as well.
We're still on our trail project across the river over here, trying to obtain a private piece of ground that would connect the fishing access to the town of Superior. All of a sudden, Parks, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, who has those programs consistently, they just don't seem to want to talk to us anymore.
Because they don't have any money.
Yeah.
That could be what it is. Yeah, so we'll, Kevin and Emily will talk further about those two questions. One about the individual improvements that could go with the subdivision, and then also the updating of surveys in St. Regis. Those are two, pretty straightforward ones. We can find out where they're eligible. All right. Anything else on infrastructure?
Well, eventually, if something ever coalesced after the land, who owns what at the airport is figured out or transferred and or whatever happens with it, there is a potential for an industrial park at the airport. Now the three-phase is present, so, but there's quite a bit of FAA county gerrymandering that needs to go on in terms of who owns what and swapping for this piece and that piece. And so,
Does anybody know is somebody doing that, or is that a project? The actual planning?
It's actually, no, there isn't anything as of yet. We have an airport layout plan which is approved by the FAA. Tim's very versed on it, and he's getting a headache as I speak about it, because the county owns some lands that the FAA would like to have, and the FAA owns some lands that the county would like to have, and then to swap those so that the FAA owns the airport proper and we own the piece adjacent to it, it would still come under FAA criteria for occupancy and use and all that kind of thing, but we would own it and have to say as to whether or not.
Right.
And so there's a fair amount or a large amount of work that has to go into place before that discussion can even occur. And it comes down to, good idea, you do it, sort of thing.
Right,
So,
right. So maybe that's another planning grant there. It's an actual opportunity to have somebody hired to walk through that process.
The county's next planning grant, unfortunately, that we hooked ourselves into the corner, our next CDBG grant is going to be for an improvement on Highway 135. We did the planning grant for the fairgrounds and upgrade and do that. It was turned down and denied. I'm a little bit in wonderment maybe, but almost to the wondering and disgust of, in the past you used to hear kind of about your grants and kind of where they landed and where you did things. This last round of grants just went into a void as far as I'm concerned.
And was it last year?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And in the past they gave you some kind of rating
Right.
of where
Your scoring
what got
criteria.
funded and where the thing. I didn't see any of that. If anybody else saw CDBG put that out, I'd really be interested in it.
We can get that for you, because Sanders County had a housing grant that went in, and they actually never heard anything. And so we contacted the state and they said, yeah, they didn't get funding, but they're on hold in case, because, so if there's $1 million and it's all allocated to grants, some projects don't move forward, then the next person in line might get that grant, so theirs is held till the next cycle, so it'd be good to know.
Yeah,
some
but did they
details.
even tell you where you ranked on the cycle on that?
They did, they were able to request their scores and got it, and know what they needed to do.
Maybe that's all I need to do is request the scores.
Sure, but we can find out, also. 'Cause we
If
talked
you
to
ever
them.
hear, Tim, why was the fairgrounds idea shot down?
I don't know.
He doesn't know, he
Oh,
never
I
heard.
don't know, all they gave us, and they sent us way late a letter, and they sent it to the commissioners. I was the primary contact, I put all the stuff together, never even informed me, never told me that it was turned down or
A
not.
lot of times they will only communicate with the county because the county is actually the applicant, but we can definitely find out and request scoring. I think that's really important to know. Did you barely miss it and should you go in again,
Or was there some aspect of it they didn't like and change that?
or didn't understand? In the case of Sanders County Housing, because they don't have a planning board or any sort of planning function, they got 0 out of 85 points for that.
Yeah.
So until they have that in place, they'll never make it through the process.
Yeah.
And at least they know that now, and the commissioners could respond.
I thought they worked pretty close with us when we did the senior citizens
Oh, yeah.
center.
They did.
I mean, they kind of
They
helped
did
us
that.
through it and gave
Yeah.
you a rating and,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
there's been,
this is your weak spots and,
but there's been three different
three
different regimes since that occurred.
Right.
And the part that Tim's talking about, it was in,
Right. Well,
it
Department
had
of Commerce.
exploded and not everything had hit the ground yet, so.
Well, Department of Commerce doesn't even have a director right now.
Right.
I mean, so
So-
everything's up in the air, but we can get that information, we will. I'm happy to do that. Okay, well, let's move on to housing then. The Human Resource Council's area, and they handle your housing. So I don't know if there are housing ideas. I definitely heard the need for workforce housing, infrastructure for a potential private developer to put in housing. So HRC will have their own hearing, and last year I was informed when it was, and I haven't been informed yet when they're having their hearing. But what I did last year is any housing identification needs that came up, I submitted those directly to Jim at HRC so that they put it in their plan and they don't forget about Mineral County. So I don't know how active they are here, do they?
Yeah.
They've
we're-
got 3
we're-
units
we're in
on
the-
this too.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we're in the process of doing a three house, or isn't it, for
Yeah.
senior
Great. That's great, okay. So, other than generally needing workforce housing, is there anything specific you're seeing?
Could I bring up transitional housing for
Absolutely you can.
domestic and sexual violence?
Do you have a shelter here right now?
No.
So what happens with victims of or survivors of domestic violence?
We can put them up in the motel for a couple days, and they can either go to the shelter in Missoula, or they go home.
Okay. So would you say, because I used to build transitional housing in my career, where would this fit in emergency versus getting them to transitional? Would they go to a hotel and then get screened for a potential, if there was transitional housing? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, actually, I would follow whatever Sanders is doing.
Okay.
Gail Surratt is the one that offered to share her grant information with us.
Okay. All right. Is that something we definitely want to get on Jim's radar? Because he'd be applying, most likely, he'd be applying for any housing on your behalf, so it's good for them to know. I will briefly talk about just a couple of housing funding options. Obviously, we mentioned CDBG, which also funds housing for low and moderate income families. Home is another grant that is under the Department of Commerce. The Montana Board of Housing funds housing, and USDA Rural Development fund housing. And then also, as a reminder, you are also served by the Montana CDC, which has $90 million in new market tax credits right now. And I encourage you to have them come and do a presentation. They came and did one in Lake County. They're really looking for large-scale projects that they can support. So they, basically what it is it has to create jobs, and it has to be over a $4 million project. So that's big. So for instance, we talked about it at the jail at Lake County, but it's really not going to create a bunch of jobs. So unless it would create a significant number of jobs, they wouldn't be eligible. But basically the way it works is you go through the new market tax credit process. If you are funded, they can support up to 20% of the project, and then they send you back out to go raise the rest. And then at the end of the day, they have basically $20,000, or sorry, 20% of your project that they are able to fund at a low rate because it's tax credit money. So we're not experts on this. We don't do tax credits in our agency, but we definitely support the work that they're doing at Montana, Idaho CDC, and again, they serve Montana and Idaho. So if you ever do have a very large multi-million-dollar project, definitely contact them to find out more. All right, so CDBG, we already talked about it a little bit, but there are specific housing programs. Basically, they will do large-scale multifamily housing and rehab, and they do small-scale single-family housing rehab. Again, your HRDC performs this function for you. So if you had a housing project, it would go through the HRDC. So this is for low-income housing, as I mentioned. And
what was the rehab?
oh, sorry.
That was the word.
Oops, I don't know how to go backwards.
That's okay.
Can you click me back twice? I can go forward, but not backwards. So I think if you just do the arrow going left,
Oh, there it is.
or just actually on your keyboard,
Just
you
go-
do the arrow. There you go.
Yeah, the single-family housing rehab groups.
Yeah, so we had an applicant, do you know who CAP is in Kalispell? So they do Lincoln, Lake, Flathead, and one other county, it's not yours. And basically they have this grant, which is a housing rehab grant, and the one they're actually writing right now to expand that project is to do rehab, and it's mostly for seniors.
And there was a $7,500 loan or grant.
I think $20,000 loan that you can do to make upgrades on your house, new roof, accessibility, energy efficiency, some of those types of things. And HRC, I'm certain, has this program because they do in Missoula. So your clients or your residents would be eligible for it too. But basically, again, if it's the grant, it's low-income seniors. If it's the grant, it's a no-brainer. Somebody's hired to do $7,500 worth of improvements, and then the only kind of requirement, other than being eligible, is that you have to stay in the home for at least a year afterwards, which in Lake County, this was a big conversation because sometimes these are misused to, it brings the building up to such a better place that then they sell the building a year later, and we've actually lost a low-income housing unit as a result. So it does have to be owned. It can't be a rental, low-income and seniors. But if you do have that need here, definitely call Human Resource Council and have them start working with your groups. And they have flyers and all sorts of things about it, but it's definitely something that's really starting to show in some of the other counties that we work in. They're really starting to use them.
Do you know, is there any performance on that? Do they, if they come to the county, make a presentation and say we have the funds available, do they ever have to tell the county that they actually did something?
Well, you definitely can invite them back and ask them to do that. Now, their funders...
I've sent people to them a number of times, and as far as I know, not one of them has been accepted.
Oh, really? I think it'd be worth having them come and present then for that exact reason, to find out how many in Monroe County have been actually selected and were successful in getting the project. Because they actually have to report to CDBG. You know how strict CDBG is. So one of the reasons that CAP is working so hard to reach Lake County right now is they weren't serving Lake County at all. And it's one of their 4 counties they're supposed to serve. And so they have this big effort to do some outreach to Lake County. So I would think that it would be the same way at HRC. So it'd be worth inviting them up to say, tell us how you've impacted Mineral County.
And then is like an incorporated town of Superior different than the county per se, or is it all included in the?
Well, as far as the applicant,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter whether they're in town or resident
the only
of the
difference
county.
is if it's an entitlement city, like Missoula, for instance. So Mineral County would compete for CDBG funding at the state level. Missoula, that's an entitlement city, gets their own pot of CDBG money, and they
don't compete.
they don't compete with the state. So, but you're too
Who
small.
Who handles that?
The grants office that they just closed,
Yeah.
which got shoved into somewhere else.
Yeah, they just closed their county grant office, which I'm wondering how that's gonna work, but hopefully. Okay, let's see if I can get this. All right, so we did our housing.
Money for that water.
Yeah, except it's county and
Yeah, county,
cities
not
who
city.
did the water, because I made the same joke. I was like, closing departments, you can buy the city water, but actually it's county. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about economic development. I'd like Kevin and Emily to kind of talk about what they do here in the economic development arena, and then what we bring to town.
Well, we pretty much refer to Lake County. No.
I don't think so.
That was quick. It's pretty much from, I have this idea forward. I tend to be a sounding board for folks that have an idea and is this feasible and what should my business structure be, what considerations, what questions do I ask, what funding is available if I do, what are the liabilities, all these kinds of things. So you take them through this process. I don't instantly say you need a business plan because that just scares them off and they're still got questions. So we're pretty much a point of contact for referrals and for basic information. Then within the revolving loan fund, screening projects that come through requesting dollars. And really getting into what, why, and how they're going to repay it, that kind of thing. Make them aware of the kinds of questions that formidable loan board is going to ask. The job retention and creation part, just kind of being an ear for, well, we've got 3 businesses in town that have been, 4 now, that have been through, I'm needing to do this or needing to do that, what would you suggest? And give them some things to think about and get back to me, and here's some different manner you can go about it in. We rely on Carol Cunningham, Lake County Community Development, PTAC, to come in and do Excel, QuickBooks, basic business training, that kind of thing for folks. And she provides classes on a monthly basis at the chamber. They aren't hugely attended, but we do hear from the people that do attend, and they're very beneficial. So it's worth the extra to touch those 2 or 3 that do attend. So there are those opportunities, educational opportunities we put out there for business. And then with our revolving loan fund, we haven't had a whole lot of, well, I guess we did on some CDBGs. We've had 3 or 4 instances where we've provided gap financing and a lower interest rate that made an entity bankable. And that's, all that does is our lower interest rate goes against the bank's interest rate, and the ultimate interest rate comes out at 5% instead of 11. And then we've been able to, then the bank likes that because we take a second, the bank accepts no risk whatsoever. We take all the risk and the people get their money. So, it's kind of a, but we haven't done a whole bunch of that because the banking system is not real friendly towards small business. And I don't know if that's going to change with the new administration, but the banking laws pretty much fit right in with the tax credit $4 million threshold. The big banks won't even look at a business unless you're talking millions. And so there is a gap there for small business as far as getting the funding that they need. Especially access to capital is the biggest one. That's pretty much kind of what we do.
And I just always like to take this time to say how important it is to have a local economic development agency on the ground because, again, we're serving 3 counties and an Indian reservation, and so for us to have people everywhere is pretty hard. And also for the walk in the door people who just want to throw an idea about a business. Kevin, Emily can send them home to do homework and they come back a little more prepared and come to a few classes and that kind of thing. We really are looking at a model next year for our workshops where we're going to do some, and this will help with attendance, we're going to do some of our workshops on site and some of them we're going to start doing through webinars. So if they come into your office or they're at home, they could get the link from you and actually watch the class. And we had to talk to USDA into it, but you can imagine, you live in Mineral County, how much mileage reimbursement costs are for us to come over for 3 people when we could offer the same service as long as the person had internet and a computer. Mm-hmm. So, or, we could hold them on a screen or, something like that. So we're really looking at ways to reach more people in a cost-effective way. So we'll be talking with you guys about how we're going to balance that. The well-attended classes that are more hands-on, we'd be here, but the ones that are mostly information, we could do over a webinar. So we're looking forward to that in the next year, which starts after July. All right, so economic development is kind of the third one we're talking about, and I want to talk a little bit about what happens at the Office of Tourism and Business Development. So a year ago, these offices were combined, and that's where Community Development Block Grant is housed, Big Sky Trust Fund, Tourism, Statewood Products Revolving Loan Fund. They have a great website, and literally you pick which thing you're working on, and you can walk right through the program. And then the Department of Labor has workforce training. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these. So Kevin did talk about the CDBG job creation and retention grants. This is called CDBG-ED. So there are several things. You can assist private sector to create or retain jobs for low and moderate income persons, primarily through loans to businesses. This is exactly what we did with Superior Meats. They were able to expand their workforce and their infrastructure. So customized employee training. So if there is a business that they're expanding or bringing in a new piece of equipment or something like that, and they need to enhance the skills of their employees, that can be done through this. There's also public service funding that can go through community colleges to actually do some of the targeted training. And then the EDA has a separate pool of funds that's designed to stimulate economic development activities by assisting private sectors in creating and retaining jobs for low and moderate income persons. And again, most of these are through loans. Probably the most active source we're working with right now at Lake County Community Development is through the Big Sky Trust Fund. More and more, the funding sources like CDBG like to see that you've done some planning in the forefront, and Big Sky Trust Fund is a great fit for that. So they have a lot of money, and 75% of it is used for economic development projects for job creation, and then 25% are for planning. So this is a lot of information, but basically in order to help new and expanding basic sector businesses is what the category 1 is. So there's a whole lot of information here, but basically it can help with reduction of interest rates for commercial loans. It can help with relocation for businesses. It can help with rental assistance or lease buy downs for relocation or expansion. Can help purchase land, building, or equipment. It can actually help with wages for net new employees. This is a really popular one. It can also help with construction materials, employee training, and administrative costs. The Big Sky Trust Fund does need to go through your local economic development agency, so we'd never say go write one. We'd say come to the office and let's look at the project and we'll help you through the process. And then category 2, which is actually our most popular one right now, is really a planning grants. And these planning grants have to result in economic development, job creation, or retention. So Again, if we're going to work on a planning grant for a project, it's ultimately, hopefully, creating some sort of positive economic development impact. So it's reimbursable. It can help support business improvement districts and central business district redevelopment, can help with industrial development, feasibility studies, creation and maintenance of baseline community profiles, matching funds for other federal grants, reproduction costs for film or media, and administrative expenses. This is really where we'd be talking about that, potentially that planning grant for looking at St. Regis's survey could be eligible for this. Montana Department of Labor Workforce Training. They have an incumbent worker training program for businesses that have less than 20 employees. It's for training, retaining, and skills enhancement to increase the company's productivity. You do have to go through a BEAR team member, and in this case, you contact you guys, is that right? And then that gets put forward. These are reimbursements, and so the company can get up to $2,000 per employee to do training for their own employees. And this funding goes fast, so it's first come, first served. So if somebody has a project like this in mind, this is good to go for early, and it starts with calling your local economic development agency. They also have primary sector workforce training, and this is to hire and train new employees. So it has to be a value-added business with 50% of its sales from outside Montana. So an example is Jor, just got this grant. They're also called Rocky Mountain Twist, but basically they're and because most of their sales are outside of Montana, it's a perfect fit for them. Where each job that's created, they have to have a minimum of 10. They'll actually get $5,000 per employee to go back into the company. So again, if somebody's looking at expansion, they start at the Economic Development Agency, and then we look at all these different for them. Right now, especially because we're seeing the growth in businesses. Might not be a new business, but it might be growing business that's going to add employees. Another one we have right now is called Hotwoods. They do wood stocks for guns, and they've been doing it in a garage forever. And they're going to move into a manufacturing space. And so they're going to hire new employees, grow the company. So we have them in a couple of different grant programs right now to get to that point. So Montana Office of Tourism, unfortunately, as of yesterday, this screen has changed because they're out of money. So bummer. The grant process is open. They have $1 million pool of funds. Applications are evaluated pass, fail. You can only apply in one category at a time. These are for, and I'll talk about what qualifies, but they're for tourism activities not intended to be sustained by this fund. So if you're going to upgrade the fairgrounds in some way, then you have to be, the county or city or whoever has to be able to maintain that and keep that going. And no state or federal agencies can apply. Unfortunately, we were told that the very first year they did this, there was $1 million and it was gone in a month. And so the next year they said, well, we'll release the funding as the Fed tax dollars come in and disperse it quarterly. Well, it's February and they're all gone. So I don't know how that happened exactly, except for maybe Fed taxes only collected twice a year instead of 4 times. I don't really know. And so we're getting some information about that. I will give you an example of one that was done recently. The Nine Pipes Museum in Lake County just received the infrastructure grant, and it's a dollar for dollar match, but they were able to, or will be able to, upgrade their HVAC system in the whole building. So they'll pay $1 and tourism will pay $1. So it's an awesome program. It's actually down to 3 categories, although I didn't change that. So there's a digital development, infrastructure, and event paid media advertising. So if you have like an annual event that you want to make, showcase, that's kind of that event one. But like I said, the next funding will now be available in July. I think the big thing to pay attention to is there's a lot of change, obviously at the federal level, but also at our state level as far as being in our legislative session. And so the future of Department of Commerce, Tourism, and Business Development, we're just not sure yet. So we're continuing on as if it's just like it is. And then the Wood Products Revolving Loan Fund, as I mentioned, is part of Department of Commerce. Have you had a grant up here under this fund? We haven't
Right.
either, yeah.
We submitted one,
Okay.
Trexan did.
Okay. So basically, this is for businesses in the wood products industry for working capital equipment or infrastructure. It's a loan, generally around 4%. It's based on $20,000 per job created or retained, and it requires, history and projections of financials. And if somebody was interested in this, they would go to the local economic development agency.
And this would apply to anything in the wood products
Mhm,
industry.
mhm.
So even the people that build the roads to get to the woods,
Mhm. Yep.
they have a project.
All right. And again, what we typically find out is as we at least do a planning grant potentially for that or some sort of study, then we find out what we're eligible for. Or now when you contact Department of Commerce, the great thing is you might think it qualifies for this, but it might actually qualify for a different source of funds that's a better fit. And they love to talk to us about that and get us in the right direction. Used to be you just blindly submitted your application and didn't hear back and wondered why you didn't qualify, and they're doing a lot better of screening that and getting you to the right area, so that's great. Montana Arts Council, they have grant programs. We list this every time just because it's nice for people to know that there are grants. So there's artists in schools and community residencies grants, there's cultural and aesthetic project grants, there's public value partnership grants, and then strategic investment grants for the arts. And so typically it's an artist who wants to do a project like, paint the utility boxes, or a teacher who needs additional funds in the classroom, or a community art center, that kind of thing. So, and most of these you can apply for directly, but again, we encourage you to always go to your local economic development agency. So growth through ag, this is another hot one that's happening right now, it seems like a lot. This is Department of Agriculture. It's eligible applicants are individuals, businesses, public and private agencies, educational institutions, and local governments. So basically anybody can apply for these. They're really looking for people who are strengthening and diversifying agriculture in Montana, adding value to production, and creating and retaining jobs. So I'm sure you've heard me say that probably 30 times by now, that creating and retaining jobs are really what most of these funds are looking for. So they have grants up to $50,000. They have loans up to $100,000, and they have a dollar for dollar match. And so we have written this grant many times for equipment within our own facility and our food processing facility that other folks use. We've also assisted businesses in writing their grants. We have a local creamery in St. Ignatius, and we help them buy their ice cream pasteurizing machine through one of these grants. So again, we have a food processing facility and have the experts in ag in our facility and like to help with these grants. Have you done one yourself, or does it usually go through us for growth?
No, we did one with Mary
Okay.
Hippish,
Oh, Hippish, yeah.
and she never got funded on any of them.
Okay.
Well, as a matter of fact, we made 3 runs at them.
Wow. Okay. Usually, Jan Tusick in our office, she kind of knows what's going on at the state level in Department of Ag, and so she's able to let people know, we've got somebody
Well,
going
we
in.
did run through
Okay.
Jen with it, and
Okay.
Jen
It
helped
just
us
didn't-
do it, and it just,
For whatever reason, that one didn't go through, and so typically they know what's coming down the pipeline, and they'll talk to different applicants about, there's one going in right now, so next time it might be better to wait, that kind of thing. So we just want to briefly talk about the regional services we provide. Like I said, it's so important to us to have our local economic development agency here. I'll try to wrap this up quick. But also we provide some services at a regional level that support the work done in all of our counties. So we have our own rural microenterprise loan and technical assistance program. And again, that's where we, if your local loan fund can't do it, we can help with that, and then the technical assistance that our staff bring with the classes and things like that. We help access state and federal programs. We do have a procurement and technical assistance program, which Kevin mentioned is called PTAC, which helps businesses get government contracts. And it's literally what that's all about. We have a disadvantaged business certification program. Again, when they're looking to get contracts, by having that certification, it gives them extra points. We do our training workshops. We have a cooperative development program where we actually help businesses, food and non-food, develop as cooperatives if that's the model they want to pursue. And then in our food and ag development program, we have our 13,000 square foot food processing facility. It's a shared use facility that food businesses can rent and use. We have some of our own products, and then we also co-pack for different businesses that want us to pack their food for them, basically, from raw all the way to labeled and shipped out the door. Obviously, value-added agriculture is a key part to what we do. And then Farm to Institution is probably our most busy program right now, where we're working with Western Montana growers to get local food from the farm through Western Montana growers program into hospitals and schools. And the Choose Local movement or local food movement is a big deal, and it impacts the economy in so many ways. It also impacts health. And so we have a full-time employee who's working hard to get that program farther reaching than it is right now. Interestingly enough, we're in Lake County, and Kalispell uses our Farm to Institution program more than anybody else. So they're not even in our footprint, but they happen to have schools and hospitals that are very excited about local. All right, so can we talk about any economic development needs or projects that you know are coming down the pipeline? We already broke down the expansion of Superior Meats. Any new businesses or job training projects or things like that that you are aware of?
Well, not that I can share.
Oh, yeah.
It's still at that
Okay.
point with all of them.
Okay.
Just to say that there is just people looking at potentials, and probably 3 of them are looking at potentials on public lands in terms of Forest Service management potential, which lends risk to everything. But it's a chicken and egg thing, where if we don't have the people, then they're not going to get the jobs. But if we have the jobs and there's no work on the federal lands,
right.
So you don't have the anyway.
And then where do you live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's our constant.
Okay.
battle.
Well, I know we're in touch all the time about
Machine
as
shops.
things come in.
We have 2 potential machine shops. And I think one has already been in contact with you,
Okay.
Tom Allen.
Mhm. All right, well, I'm very happy to hear that there's growth and development, or at least dreams of growth and development in Mineral County.
Yeah, it's a pleasant change.
It is very nice. Any questions or comments we can add to the record? It is a pleasant change. I like to see it. And the sun's coming out. So that's great. All right, well, thank you for your time today, and I made a list of everything that was brought up, and I have some follow-up to do, as far as some of those eligible grants, and definitely want to follow up on the CDBG Fairgrounds grant and figure out why didn't we ever hear anything. Seems like we're talking to them.
That's kind of our number one need, I think, on the list, isn't it, sort of?
Pretty much.
Right.
That's the and then Kelly, the pool, because that's,
Yeah.
it's a whole bunch of use, but the funding is tough on that, because nobody will fund the swimming pool, and it's just, but it's something that the community uses. It's kind of like sidewalks.
Yeah.
If they're there, everybody uses them and loves them.
Right.
And if they're not there, they wish they had them, and nobody wants to pay for them. So there's all kinds of things like that, and the pool would be one of the.
Well, the good thing is we built an aquatic center in Polson, and that was before my time, but one of my favorite things to do is ask people how they did it. So we'll find out. They're actually hosting the state meet next weekend, and there's a hotel available in the whole valley, so it's a good thing. All right.
Well, and then the schools, I know Superior's looking at trying to run another mill for a junior. One they're in, basement's flooded right now, or wet. So, but the tax situation in the county's grim. Secure Rural Schools hasn't been funded, and so more cuts, and more, and less.
I'm sure that was the conversation at MACO. Across the board.
Yeah, lots of conversations, just really doing anything.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse, for coming over.
Absolutely.
This is at the end of December, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
January, so you're always usually a month behind. So January is just being closed out now in the treasurer's department.
Oh,
So usually it's closed out by the 22nd of the month. So you should be getting January in a week or so.
okay.
Okay? Always a month behind. So I think why I'm here is, I guess, so I think one of your most important jobs as commissioners is to review the budget to actual statement on a monthly basis. And so Nicole is emailing these once a month. Once that month is closed out, she emails them. And I was thinking, Dwayne asked me to come and sit with you guys and just go over kind of how I would look at it and what looks odd to me or whatever. And I can always come if you guys want and look at it with you. It's up to you. I would be more than happy to do that. I usually try to come on Fridays anyway when I do come, just in case you guys have questions that I'm here on that day. So I'm coming about every other Friday. Sometimes I'll skip a couple Fridays, but.
Well, I think it'd be a good idea to have you come, until we get where we
Until.
feel.
If we have a department director head meeting, it might be nice that was the day, because everybody, if there's anything wrong with their budget. But.
Yeah, and that's what I think too.
If
So
we can get the department heads to come to the meeting.
I almost think like you may want to do this during your admin time, like you're doing now, and then if something pops out, then that's when you could. And I don't even know if you want to. Because originally I was thinking the department head meeting too would be good, but then that kind of slows everybody down for one department. So then you may. So now I'm kind of going away from that. Now I think that you may just want to call that one person in at some point. So it's just them. So it doesn't slow the whole, bog everybody down. So before we get started on the budget, there's just a couple things. We got the audit report today. And so anyway, so it's due the end of March. So this year we actually are on time and we have it filed on time.
What the hell?
That's very exciting. Very exciting stuff. And so part of it is we have to advertise. There's a statute that says when you get your audit report, you have to advertise within 30 days to notify the public of any findings. And so you're going to see something. I just sent it to the mineral today, so I don't know, next week or whatever, you'll see a summary of our findings. And I just want to point out something just in case somebody were to read it and be like, well, what the heck? There's 4 findings. One is cash, that cash didn't reconcile by $2,330. The other finding is the sheriff's commissary. They didn't reconcile, and they're supposed to be doing it now, but they didn't reconcile their bank account for the commissary to the trust of the inmate commissary. And so that's been a couple, 4 years
I was gonna say.
being repeated.
Yeah.
But supposedly they really are, from what I understand, they're working on that. So there's that. The other one is the certification of the Title III money. So it's due February 1st of every year. So we did it timely this year. I mailed it January 20th or so. So we're timely this year. But last year it was late by a month. So that's what they're talking about there. And then the last one, though, where I just don't want any people saying, well, what the heck, is the state reporting requirements. It says that the budget was late. That's the fiscal year 16 budget. It's the budget that was done, because they're auditing fiscal year 16. So our fiscal year 17 budget that we all worked so hard on was filed timely. But that
previous budget was still late. So that's what they're going to be talking about if anybody in the public were to say, well, what the heck?
And that's why we hired you, is because.
Yeah, because that fiscal year 16 budget didn't get filed until, I think, February of, So anyway, so just, and then this is a copy for you guys. I have one up in the clerk and recorder's office, so if the public wants to come in, we have to put one up there. So there's that. And then the other thing, so Roman asked me earlier about the ballots. So I did print out the invoices for that. And from everything I can tell, it looks like it was $150 for the revision.
Oh, not too bad.
So you can have that, but that's what it, that's the only one. So those are all of the invoices related to printing ballots. And then that's the only one that I can see that, for the revision. So.
Oh, but then what's this other one though?
Those are just the main ballots.
And then we had to reprint them.
Yeah, that's what.
Even though it's all on the same date?
No, look at the dates, they're different. So that's October.
Oh, ballot, I was looking at ballots. So
the invoice date is like October 17th on that one, and then it.
Yeah, another one says 12/8.
So but I don't know for sure, but that's how I think it was. So. Okay. All right. So on the budget to actual, so we have budget to actual. So the first thing, I think how I would go about it is the first thing I would look at is combined, I guess, I would look at the salaries, which is super important. So this is December. So it's 50%, right? So if we're under 50% or if we're at 50%, we're doing good, right? We're on track. So I would always look at salaries, and then really I would just probably go down and look at the account total and see if that one's at 50. So we'll look at the commissioners first. That's on top. So the commissioner's salaries, you're at 49%. And the total for that department within the general fund is 49%. I think it's fine, right? Seems to be on track. Nothing pops out. So if you go down Justice Court, they're at 51% in salaries and 50% overall. I don't think I would worry about it quite yet.
Okay.
The clerk and recorder, they're at 47% and 46% overall. But you'll see later in her other budget in elections, she's over. And so you can always move money from the clerk and recorder to elections. Those are both her budgets. So if one is over and one is under, you're still okay. So, finance looks fine. The treasurer, so this caught my eye. So I was looking at the treasurer. Their salaries are good at 48%, but overall they're at 52%. So then I started looking, and if you look at this, if you look at Object Code 360, that repairs and maintenance, what is that? So I don't know. I mean, I just highlighted it for me, so I need to look into that. Because repairs and maintenance for the office, for any county buildings.
Facility.
Yeah, was in the facilities budget. So, I'll look at that. I don't know what it is.
And then she ended up spending it on consultants, the next line up. 3201 and 3200, and one's canceled out.
No, so the consultants, so the original budget was 3,200, and the current appropriation is 3,200, which means we haven't done any budget amendment. And there's been no charges on consultants at all. But yet, or maybe it's a miscoding. Maybe, but I don't think she's hired consultants.
Well, then
But
she,
then why
her part of her,
appropriations is
what-
3,200?
but wasn't her part of this budget, her budget supposed to help pay for your advice? Remember though, you balance your cash and you're helping them with their books and.
Yeah, we have never, we've never really determined how much to allocate there because, I don't know, I don't think we
Her
budgeted,
and
we talked
Stacy
about
were
it.
supposed to help pay for
Yeah.
that need when.
So this is for, how I see that consultant services is, that is for, do you remember, what do you call it? The superintendent of schools?
Oh.
That's what that is for.
Oh.
Sure it is.
Yeah. That's what that's for. And then the other thing, Mary has hired, do you remember me suggesting that Mary hire that one person, her name's Kathy McKeldry. She works and lives in Plains, and she helps out Sanders County, and she does that school distribution,
Yeah.
so we don't give them too much money and
Like,
right. And so that's where that person recently has started doing some stuff up there. So that's what I think actually will come out of there. So that repairs and maintenance kind of, I have it highlighted so I can look into that and see. For the data processing, it's at 54%. But this is a hard budget, that the data processing, because things aren't monthly necessarily. I mean, we could have
if
paid.
you need them, you need them.
Right, or the annual fee was due already, and we've already paid it. So, and this is a budget that that you, Casey, are in charge of. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can keep an eye on that one. Okay. Elections. So you can see here that salaries are at 48. And overall it's at 56. So that one is a little over.
61.
Yeah. County attorney, seems fine. Facilities, they're at 51% salaries, 45% overall. Again, that's going to be a hard one. That's not going to follow the 50% nice rule because things happen. He could have spent all of his budget in the first month of the year, or all of his capital.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, but all of his capital outlay budget, or so that's kind of a harder one to look at also. So I'm just gonna scan salaries in the total. So the next one that I get to that kind of concerns me a little bit, it's going to be on page 6, and it's the fair. So for salaries, they've spent 46%, so that seems fine. But supplies, what's going on? So supplies, their budget was $5,000, and they've spent $20,000. So they're already they've already spent their entire budget for the whole year.
Why would they do that?
I don't know.
And that was, so the fair was in this budget, so they spent it all at the fair, more than likely. The August fair.
Maybe, but they were well aware of the fact that they needed to cut back. I mean, it was a big issue with the fair. They had spent way more. They had negative cash. So I would call the fair in and say, listen, and maybe when you call the fair, maybe just not one person, like maybe like the board. So you're just not relying on one person to relay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that one that's definitely not good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'll say. Trying to think who's on that board now. Carol.
Al Atchison.
Al Atchison?
And,
Deb quit. Carol Johnson. Rachel Cope.
So the other thing that, so anyway, so the fair, I think you guys should follow up on that. On page 7, something accounting wise that I need to look at is, look at that psychiatric exam. It's about in the middle of the page and it's negative. So I don't know.
Is that the one that we just had to deal with? Remember Kathleen was down and said that we had that
Involuntary commitment.
Yeah.
But it's negative, so I don't know what's going on there. So that,
Yeah, I
that's
don't
one of
either,
those
because
that-
I know that we,
You never can predict, because if somebody in the county suddenly
right.
goes off their rocker and you got to send them to Warm Springs and...
But it's negative.
yeah, I don't. that
It's
doesn't
not
make
positive.
sense either.
So it's backwards, like it was
Yeah.
entered backwards
Yeah,
or
something.
somebody,
Yeah.
I don't know, something's
Well,
weird with that.
Yeah,
Oh,
like.
I see.
Did she cut it? Was that one of them that she cut so low on her budget that?
I just don't know. I don't know. I have it circled for me.
Yeah, because, oh, you mean the entry. Committed for the month is a negative 3,000.
Right, negative.
Yeah.
So we're reimbursing, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know what's going on here. So I'll have to look at that.
Who, now that we pulled Nicole out of that office, who does these numbers, entries?
Nicole,
Oh, okay.
kind of. So
Oh, it'll be easier to ask
all of
her. We don't have
these-
to go up
No,
upstairs.
no, I'll figure it out. So all of this because this is just expenditures you're looking at. So all of this is done through Nicole, all through claims.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I just meant like the start of the year amount. When we do the budget, and this is the amount that's allowed.
I input that.
Oh, so why'd you put a negative on the front?
I didn't. I put a 3,000.
Okay, I'm just teasing you. 'Cause somebody put a negative on the
So
front.
their budget, so their budget is $3,000. That's what you guys approved, and that's what was input into the system. But somewhere along the line, either a claim is being entered the wrong way when they're entering claims, and they're entering it as a negative, or I don't know. I need to look at it. I just saw it myself, so.
Well, I understand the entry of, but when the claim comes in, I'm just talking about the initial amount that the budget set for the year.
So the original appropriation.
Oh, it's in the positive, never mind, I was looking at the wrong.
3,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay, now I'm following you.
I almost think there was a mistake, and maybe they tried to fix it, and then maybe they did it the wrong way. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. We started out only giving them 3,000, but suddenly we have a balance of 4,500. Woohoo!
Right. Right. On page 8, you guys will see the comprehensive insurance.
Yeah, I was gonna see that, that's.
And I think that's okay, because I think that's one of the timing things. I think we've paid our bill for the whole year. So we
I
should be
see.
at 100%.
I see.
Yeah.
But they're still at 54%, which we'll have to watch overall.
Where?
Library.
Yeah, the library.
And that's what,
The library,
well, is that one of those where it shows workman's comp, we're at 214% under the library.
yeah, let me look into that too. And the reason why, so for workers' comp in the library, for years and years, the county was paying, for librarians and the clerks, they were paying under the wrong rate code.
Oh.
And so they were paying 4 times as much that they needed to for workers' comp for those employees. And so what happened here, so the $277, that is at the correct rate, what we budgeted, at that way lower rate, because they're very low risk for workers' comp. So that is the correct rate. So what was supposed to happen is they were supposed to send us a reimbursement. And I will...
Should be out, though.
I will follow up on that reimbursement. So maybe the reimbursement came and Mary put it somewhere. Maybe the reimbursement never came. I don't know. It was something that Charlie and Nick were
Yeah, because the
Making
same
sure.
thing's under the planning board too. The work is on the next page.
What? Right back to the library. That termination leave. That's the second line below salary.
Don't know. Who
Did somebody leave?
left? Did somebody leave?
Yeah, let me think.
And that would be the payout of their sick and vacation.
Mm-hmm.
But who left? I don't know. I'll look into it. I'm not sure.
Hello?
So I'll look at the workers' comp also. Now, on that workers' comp, I'm not sure what's going on. Under the planning
Yeah.
on page 9.
Helen can come down and you guys have a moment.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we got no.
Oh, yeah.
Public comment.
Well, yeah, we better stop now. It's
What
1:30.
time?
If she wants to come down in 20 minutes?
20 minutes?
Well, we still have to finish this
Oh.
and then do
Okay, thank you.
whatever.
Public
Comment.
comment.
Yeah, I thought we'd stop now for public comment because we have a gentleman here. Is it okay if
Oh,
we
yeah,
stop
yeah,
a moment?
for sure.
Earlier this year, I came in about the road maintenance and plowing. They came up there and brought the grader up there and just made it beautiful and gravelled it. Well, he's been sliding again. It was like, we had this snowstorm and stuff. I understand it took him a while to get up there, but at 2 weeks, and today he came up and plowed, and it's just a sheet of ice, and he has about a mile stretch there that he didn't even put a piece of gravel on.
Was he in the truck or the grader?
It sounded like the truck.
Oh.
Grader was in St. Regis this morning.
Well, I know
But he
that we've
did
got-
do a little bit above us, but if we had like neighbors had the ambulance come up in November, if they came up there, they would be hard pressed to make it up there without chaining up and slowing them down. And I'm probably gonna have to chain up to get up there in four-wheel drive.
This is the Verde Creek?
Yes. You got a good memory.
Yeah, well, I
Better
called
than
him.
mine.
I called him that day, and then he was.
Yeah, they did a good job catching up, but the guy just seems to, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's about a 5. And he doesn't realize that if you got an inch of ice on the road, it takes gravel.
Yeah, she said she's gonna come down in 20 minutes.
I know, we're gonna talk about it beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
She'll be on board before we come down.
okay.
But the thing is, he came at somewhere around 8 o'clock this morning. He should have had a whole load of gravel on. I don't know whether he thinks it's gold or what, I don't know.
So there's not a, I'm texting the foreman, there's not a lick of material, gravel on
Up to, he got just above the Foster's place, which is about mile 1 on the road. And he was going fast enough that there's like 2 to 4 pickup lengths between where the circle of the gravel was going to. So it's hit and miss getting onto some gravel.
So he gravelled it very lightly.
That would be a good way to put it, yes. But the first mile from the main quartz loop up, I don't think he dropped any gravel at all.
The first mile?
Yeah, and it's that steep rise up there. And I'm concerned because my neighbors have had issues with their medical. And I don't want to chain up to go back up to the house just after getting my mail.
So
And I've got a four-wheel drive.
The first
Especially
mile,
when they're
the
just
first
been a
mile totally
snowplow.
bare, you say?
As far as I can
Okay.
tell, it is. And it seems that he had some comments probably that the corner coming off the freeway going to Lozo, and you make that corner around to Felstead's, it was very lightly gravelled for a while. Now it's just about that much gravel build up. he overdid it there. So I don't know whether he, it's, somewhere a learning curve stopped, or he doesn't realize the implications of a police going up there to service someone, or the ambulance, or, I'm just a little disappointed, but I realize we're on the bottom end of getting plowed anyhow.
What, if he doesn't reply back while you're here, what's your name and phone number?
August, like the month, Kassner. We're in the same, they agree with me.
And are they at the same road?
Yeah, they're about a quarter mile higher than me, they're just before the county turnaround.
Okay.
There's only 2 miles of the whole road that needs to be done.
Okay.
But, when it rains and stuff like that and you get a sheet of ice there, you need gravel.
Mm-hmm.
And he did 2 weeks, there was, maybe that much snow, and he just blew us off, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
But I don't think he I've had 10 years of never having a problem with them graveling and making sure it was in premium condition for us to get in and out all winter. And this is sort of disappointing after being treated really well. So that's all I had to.
Okay, all right, Mr. Kassner, if we hear back today, I'll let you know if the foreman's got a plan B for you.
Okay, because, it just seems like he doesn't want to come back and get gravel in his truck.
Yeah.
It's just, and if, could you really use some gravel whenever it's convenient?
Okay.
So, anyhow, that's it for me.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gus.
We'll take care
Well,
of
I found out where you are, so I don't like making the phone calls. It's easier to come here and talk.
it. We'd rather talk to you like
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
But
yeah.
Dale, he just gets so wound. You know Dale Beck, don't you? Used to be railroad.
I think I had a conversation.
Yeah, he is so hyper, and he can't hear. And I think he's OCD and a couple other of those nice letters too.
No, we'd rather have him come in than getting phone calls.
But, I'd rather be nice about it, try to be nice and tell you my position.
Sure.
Yep.
As compared to yelling and screaming. I don't like yelling. No. I worked at Tricon. I know what that's like.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Gus.
Does that phone,
If they can get to it at a convenient time.
does your phone also receive text at that number, or
Email.
email?
Email's easier for me to pick up. It's my name,
Okay.
in
August
lowercase at gmail.com.
And I spelled it right, Kassner.
Correct. And they are lowercase,
Okay.
gmail.com. So, but I really don't like getting upset with people,
Shouldn't have to.
Well, you get more, what do they say? You get more honey with bees and vinegar, so.
They got a
Well,
job to do. If he's up there, he should be doing his job.
I just don't understand. I don't think he understands the implications of not doing a good job up there. And we had 10 years of great service up there, and every time he came up there, he graveled, so he didn't have to have a trouble either, too. So,
That's usually.
but I don't remember who was doing it. I think he probably retired or something.
Either that or that's where Jason used to do it, and Jason moved to Regis, I don't know.
The guy that lives just about where the river bend turn off, and there's that farm up there, used to
Jeff
do it a long
Mask is
time
the one
ago.
that's doing it now.
Yeah, I know, but before him,
Well, there was that Joe guy. Oh,
Yeah.
Terry Erickson was out there. Terry Erickson, Joe, what's his face?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. He was the last thing before his man.
Yeah, because there are others out there that are complaining about a little bit of,
Yeah, I've had quite a few phone calls from out that way.
Do you want me to just pass out your your card?
Sure. Yeah.
Call her and yell
Yeah.
and scream.
I write it on the wall anywhere I go.
In the bathroom.
In the bathroom. Yeah.
Call Lori.
Call Lori.
For a good
For
travel
good
time.
grader use.
Yeah. In the bathroom.
You're wondering why you got all them calls.
But, yeah, that's, it's just the little things that just doesn't get, it's the difference between, like a grader operator and someone that just drives a grader, So, but the grader guy did a really good job. He came up there and he got it all the way to the edge, and the guy just started coming back over it and plowing.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't want to
Didn't take
go
full
back
advantage
out.
of that new width then?
No, he stayed completely about that far away from it. I don't know whether it's a phobia or I don't know. I really hate to badmouth someone.
Yeah.
So
Well, we can't improve if we don't know what the mistakes are.
So page 9. Let's see. So I think under growth policy, you can see that the salaries are at 71%. But that is Tim Reed, and he just, this isn't a consistent thing. He will
takes his pay
periodically
out
put
of
things
here.
there and there and wherever to make the budget work. So I wouldn't worry about the 71%.
Because overall it's 40.
5. No, 13.
Yeah.
Overall, it's 13.
What's the total fund?
Fund total.
And the fund is everything in that.
Planning and.
Yep. So
I see.
Yep. Page 10 at the very bottom, that steno salary. I can't remember what that is. It's not what it. I think I need to rename that account because it isn't what it.
What is that?
I can't remember.
Stenography?
I can't remember, and it's not what it.
Sounds like.
It's not what it sounds like. So I think I will look at that and we can talk about it next time. I think I'll rename it to whatever it is.
Who is that associated with?
I'm completely drawing a blank.
Oh.
I think it's.
It's not for recording.
It is not. It's not. I can't remember. I just
It's
can't.
not them, extension? Like, don't.
Oh, maybe that's.
Oh yeah, it does
Like
say
they-
fund total and you
Like
got
you
both.
pay them and then they get reimbursed? Is that?
I think you're right. I think it's. Yeah. I think it is the extension.
Yeah, that
So
would-
it's the reimbursement and the.
Because I don't know who gets paid out of that, but then I think they get reimbursed.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do is we'll rename it so it actually makes sense.
Okay.
And my guess is maybe they just haven't been reimbursed yet. I don't know. I have that one highlighted for me
Okay.
to look at. Page 11 is public safety. So public safety's really in two sections. You have the law enforcement part, and then you have the care of prisoners part. So in the law enforcement, they're at 52% for salaries. Overall, they're at 50% for law enforcement. Care of prisoners, they're at 48% in salaries, and overall, they're at 47%.
Which is pretty damn good for them, isn't it?
I actually am impressed. I think it's really good.
I mean, that's,
And their overall fund is at 49%. So I think that's good.
we can keep it there.
Yeah.
That's your job, Laura.
What's that?
So that's your job.
What?
To keep it there.
Yeah. You'd have a better chance than me.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
So let's see on the next. So on page 12, you're going to see PERS, the PERS fund. That is not budgeted for by account. So if you wanted to look at the PERS fund and make sure that fund is okay, you would want to go to page 13 and look at the fund total. The fund total is at 50%.
I was writing something down, so you were saying, look, instead of looking at that, look at this for that?
Yeah. Look at this for that. Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
I was half listening.
Yeah. So if you if you look on page 12,
Yeah.
you're going to see that PERS, and then you're going to see all sorts of crazy numbers, positives and negatives and
Yeah,
whatever.
okay.
And it's because we budget for it at a higher level than what it's actually recorded at.
Okay.
So that's why you'll have all the negatives and positives. So when you're looking at that PERS fund, you just want to go to the very bottom to fund total.
Okay.
And it
Gotcha.
and that's at the bottom of page 13.
Right, okay.
And you'll see it's at 50%.
All right.
And same with the
Health insurance.
Yeah.
You go to page,
The next page. Yeah.
what is it, 16, fund total, you're at 47%.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it's good.
Go to road on page 18, roads.
The gas tax fund.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, so that is, so you'll see that that's at 75%, right? But how Jason does his fund is, so he has two funds. He has the road fund, that 2110, and then he has the gas tax fund. And what will happen is he'll spend every single thing out of this fund. He'll get it to 100%, and then he won't spend any more. So this,
And we
it will
won't
be
have any more asphalt and stuff till, for the rest of the year anyway, so.
But he will spend it. And then what will happen is even if he spends it out of the road fund, then we would reclass it to over here, so this gets to 100%. So he spends all of it. And so that happens at the end of the year.
So that gas tax, the original appropriation, that was our share, or is some of it any kind of carryover or balance from the year before?
No, because he spent it all.
Okay.
Yep.
So we got 58,240 this year in that tax.
Yep. That's what they told us we were going to get. In a couple more pages, we'll be looking at revenue, and so we'll look at it, and we'll see how much of that 58,000 we've received so far. I think it comes in quarterly payments.
Well, I'm just asking because over at Mako, another thing I learned over there at the legislature, there's so many bills, revisit this, revise that. And one of them is
that they may get rid of
when they increase this gas tax, the proposal that they have on the table is for, what is it, 12 cents more a gallon
Yeah.
or something. The Montana contractors got in on a little meeting and got a provision that if this new bill, we won't just simply get 58,000, or in other words, it would go up. I think they said it'd go up for us about 2%, so whatever amount is, but at first blush, we get more money. The contractors got in that on this new bill, if the gas tax passes with the more money, that we have all kinds of new hoops to jump through. First of all, we have to request it, and then we have to specify our plan. There's all kinds of reporting requirements, and the biggest stipulation is the only work that can be done with that has to all be contracted out to the contractors. So it kind of removes your flexibility. So if one of our county bridges has a big log jam and it starts damaging the bridge.
Was that on the gas tax bill or was that on the infrastructure bill?
Well, there's two.
Because there was an email yesterday, you've probably seen it from Harold, that said that Mako wasn't supporting the infrastructure bill as it was
Because
written.
it had so many stipulations in it.
Yeah, but the gas tax one is part of that, isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Could be.
I didn't bring my.
Because I thought the gas tax was under the infrastructure bill because
Probably is.
it's with
Probably, yeah,
infrastructure,
yeah.
yeah.
I was wondering what he was talking about with the contractors.
And then it also, the way it increases the match, if we do anything with that fund for match, it increases.
Because right now there's no match for that gas tax.
Yeah, but under this new infrastructure.
There would be a
bill,
match.
Yeah, there would be a match.
I don't think that would be hard for us because we spend quite a bit of money in the road fund, which I think could be used as the match.
But if we don't get SRS,
Yeah, right, and then yeah. No, I mean,
Our road.
it doesn't sound good to me, but I don't
Yeah.
know, I don't
Well,
know
anyway,
anything about it. But
I didn't quite realize that we got that much in the gas tax.
I don't think we need to, yeah. Okay,
I hope they do increase the gas tax, because I just bought a new vehicle that gets 20 miles to the gallon.
I'm gonna buy an electric car or something,
Yeah.
I guess.
I'll be begging the Volkswagen guy. Or my wife will.
I
Doesn't
think,
really bother me too much.
let's see. The only other fund, so then after that gas tax, you have junk vehicle, which there hasn't been any expenditures out of. And then you get into the grants, which really I mean, you can look at them, but the grants are, anybody who has a grant, they're managing it well, because they only have that much money. I mean, for the most part, they're gonna, we aren't gonna have to be concerned with grants.
What's the one headed MDA 13-531? What's that?
These are all noxious weed grants.
Oh,
And so every single year, so how they have it is every single one of those is a different year. So every year they get, $7,500. And they don't spend it all, but they can keep it, and then they just keep spending until the farthest, oldest year is gone. If that makes sense.
so on the Pilt one, it looks like that's still there. We didn't transfer that. Looks like it's still.
So if you look at that, so we're budgeted for $233,000. Committed, what we've received, or I'm no, sorry, what we've spent year to date is zero. And the reason why is, first, I don't think we even have the money yet. We usually get it in June.
Oh.
And second, it will be done at the very end of the year as a year-end transfer. And that money will goes to PERS and the permissive medical
But
levy
even though the permissive medical is at 47% currently.
of the expenditure. That's only the expenditures, and that's where they should be. But the revenue side, if we look at the revenue side, we'll look at the revenue side in 1 second.
Okay.
Right? And you'll see in the revenue side that we collect some of that money from taxes, but the rest of it is budgeted through this PILT transfer, which will be done at the end of the year.
That's what confused me, because I saw the Pilt still sitting there. So I thought, we're doing that good without having to use it.
And actually, you are right. PILT, we do keep it a year behind. So if we were to look at the cash balance in PILT, there is cash there right now. And so what will happen at the end of the year, we'll do that transfer, and then hopefully new PILT will come in, and then we keep that until the following year to do the transfer.
Yeah, have you heard anything on that, Dwayne, the Pilt? I mean, we talked about SRS.
No, there was, that deal came out about the SRS and that letter to the colleagues asking for support, but there wasn't any mention of Pilt.
well, I thought at Mako they said that it was kind of hand in hand though.
Yeah, I just was hoping that there was some separate
That
funding.
your colleague letter didn't say
Yeah.
anything about, I mean, it didn't say SRS and Pilt, it just said SRS.
So the other thing we should always, another kind of a higher risk fund on page 20 is that 911. So you'll see that their salaries are at 53%. Overall, they're at 40%. Primarily, though, if you look at contract services, you're going to see that $36,000 was budgeted
For that new system.
and they're going to start that mid-year. So their expense won't be 36, so it'll be half of that, so it will be 18.
A big hit right there.
I'm guessing it'll be about 18,000. But this is kind of where you guys may want to be looking at this. So, as far as an auditor is concerned, as long as you don't spend more than the fund total, right? It's by fund. So we've budgeted $143,000. So if they don't spend more than that, they're okay, right? But do you want to allow that? So in other words, do you want them to spend an extra 18,000 in salaries? Because they know in the back of their mind that they're gonna gain 18,000 because this isn't gonna be a full year contract. So you probably wanna think about that.
You mean splitting the work between budget years? Is that what you're talking about?
No, they're thinking, okay, we're $18,000.
We're up 18,000.
ahead, So let's have some more overtime, or let's
have a party.
I think they only budgeted this much in salaries.
Yes.
That's what they're allowed in salaries.
Sure, yeah.
Yes. So.
I mean, unless it's an emergency
Well,
of
yeah.
some sort, I mean.
Yeah.
Right. So I would keep an eye on that one because that's what's going on there. And I think that's really all. That's all I had for.
So on the very last page, it says grand fund totals. Where did I see grand fund totals?
Page 29.
Yes, 29.
So you know the primary reason why that's so low would be the road fund.
Oh.
Because in the road fund, you budget, I think we budget, I don't know, say $400,000 for capital outlay.
Right.
They don't spend it,
No.
but we budget it.
In case
So
you wreck a
that will
truck or
really,
something, and
yeah.
to replace a truck
Yeah.
or something.
So that number, I wouldn't give that number much credibility. So on the next page, we're on page 1 again, and now we're on revenues. Most of the, I would say the main revenue that I would look at, it's going to be in public safety, and it's going to be the Board of Prisoners. So if you look at the general fund, you have real estate taxes. Those are going to come in pretty much as anticipated. I mean, we're gonna budget what we levy. And you can look at the general fund. Overall, we've collected 51% of what we've budgeted. I think the main thing that I would be looking at, and you can look at that, but none of those are really that high risk of not coming in or of us over budgeting them. But if you look at, and the road, I wouldn't be that concerned about the road, but if you go to public safety, to page 4, you have real estate tax, personal property tax, and those are looking fine. But you have that one, that Board of Prisoners. And so that one is at 43% right now. In previous years, this used to be budgeted for really poorly. And so what would happen here, to get that budget to balance, they would budget revenue under Board of Prisoners significantly higher than they would ever collect, right? And so that was the risk, and that's what would happen. This year, we took extra care to make sure that we didn't overinflate that number. So we should be looking okay, and we took extra care to make sure none of our revenues were overinflated. So we should be okay. But, like I said, in the past that was kind of a high risk, but it looks okay. It's at 43%. It's not great, but it's not horrible. And so what would happen, say, in previous years, say if that number was only, 10%, you would actually revise that expenditure budget accordingly, and they would have to cut costs. But their revenue is meeting what they were budgeted for in revenue, so therefore that expenditure side of the budget is still okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but yeah, we kind of hoped that it'd be more like 65,000 so far, than 10,000 shy of that.
Yeah.
It's too bad because at Mako too, all the other sheriffs and all the other counties, their jails are just overflowing with all the state prisoners because the state DOC and prisons are full, so they're just leaving the guys in the county jails longer. Kind of wish
At the county's expenses.
But
at the county,
well,
they don't
depending
pay.
on
Well,
if they've been if they've been
depending on-
convicted or not, but
Yeah.
it'd be nice if we could get some of them.
If they haven't been convicted, then it's still at the county's expense, but once there's a conviction and they're still in the jail, then the state will start paying it. But in the meantime,
But
their
in-
jails are full and they can't go out and arrest their own prisoner,
Oh, so you'd want them to get convicted or released fast, right?
Well, that you want them to get upstairs, see the judge, be convicted, and then let them stay here because then the state's
Because
paying.
then, but until then,
But in that
it's just on our
interim,
dime.
Yeah.
Interesting.
On that same page, bump up to the motor vehicle 0.5%, so it's just below the penalties and interest there on this page.
Yeah.
What is that?
I think that's our, it's when people register their vehicles.
So they're making money on that. We didn't even anticipate that.
Yeah.
what's that other miscellaneous too, that we received 8,000.
And I think the reason on that motor vehicle, you guys, I think it was being allocated wrong at the beginning of the year because that fund isn't supposed to be getting any. But you can see in the current month, for that motor vehicle, how they didn't get any.
Didn't get anything.
It was being allocated wrong for a long
Are they
time.
confusing? There's two of them. So on the
One of them doesn't exist at all
motor
anymore.
vehicle tax, and then the other one's motor vehicle 0.5%.
So the motor vehicle 0.5 is the one that should be there,
Okay.
and that motor vehicle tax, you'll see it every once in a while, like like even on that page 5, if you go down to PERS, 10 cents. That motor vehicle tax shouldn't even be there. It's from a really old, and Mary has cleaned that up, I believe, because we didn't budget for it. It's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be in that motor vehicle 0.5. But like I said, that was being allocated wrong, and it was fixed. I can't remember what month. Maybe in August, something like that. So you won't see it in all of those funds anymore. And I think that's all I have, you guys. Any other questions you guys have on the rest of the pages? So I think after all of that, the take from it would be fair.
Yep.
And what was the other one?
And then just watch
that 911 and see what you guys want to do on that. And then there was a whole bunch of weird things that I need to follow up on. I don't know. Okay.
All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
Good.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we're thinking I'll come in for at least a while and do. Okay.
Yeah.
It helps us get back in budget mode.
Well, I
So
guess-
as our county attorney, do you think that this rises to the level of personnel confidentiality for parties involved? Should this be?
This
legal strategy.
Yeah, this matter.
Yeah.
What I would say is, I don't think we need to close the meeting or anything, but there's I was just reading over this. Tim had come up and talked to me about this maybe last week or so, and I don't think I had read anything on it.
So you don't think we need to do a closed meeting?
No, because what I would suggest is just reading this note and the attached resolution. Ms. Swimley suggests having a conference call to discuss, and I would just suggest we wait until that time, until we talk to her, and then
code.
Yeah.
Do you want us to see if she's available at this time?
No, we might have also some questions about her recommendations regarding the weed situation, so I think that might be something.
Little time for research?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think the commission should act on it now.
Okay.
Or sign it.
Okay.
And that's just a quick, brief perusal, and I can give Miss Swimley a call too, just let her know.
Sounds good.
Just some of the questions.
Candace verified for me that she sent the plat to Susan, but she didn't send that road easement document.
Well, it wasn't, yeah, it's not attached to her, to this, so I'm not sure if she has this. So,
Gotcha.
So,
yeah, I can give her a call. I'll give Miss Swimley a call.
Okay.
Okay.
So hopefully we can just reschedule that.
Did you have a good meeting with the deputies and giving them your spiel?
Oh, yes, they were, very receptive, and
Are they ready to march for Ellen's Way?
oh boy, I don't know, for truth, justice, and the American way. Yes.
There you go.
Ellen's way.
Ellen's way.
Nobody listens to me.
Well,
And that's okay.
I'd much rather have Ellen's Way than Marcy's Law. I just learned how much that's going to probably be costly.
Oh, did they talk about that at the commission? Yeah.
They tried to, when that was going on the ballot and everything, I mean, that was the biggest conversation, is what it was going to cost the counties, but people just didn't.
And not just money, time. Someone has to oversee and make sure that.
And there's a potential for lawsuits against if you don't agree. So I think former Montana Justice, Supreme Court Justice Nelson had written a nice piece, because when you see something that says for rights for victims, everybody says yes, vote yes.
Yeah, vote yes.
But when you really looked at it, and he wrote a nice piece to just try to maybe explain it a little bit better, but at our county attorney's conference last July, Brant Light from the Attorney General's office said it's going to pass. I mean, so let's just, even though we have some concerns, we know it's going to pass because it does hit victims' rights. We all want that, but it's not quite what it says. But I did just get an email, I don't know if commissioners did too, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't know if I mentioned this either, from the Board of Crime Control, that, and I think it's probably because of, God bless you, Marcy's Law, they're opening up a request for proposal for victim advocates directly associated with prosecutors' offices. So we, are hoping to get the part-time one through that federal grant. But that's only for domestic violence, sexual assault, but to actually potentially have a victim advocate for victims of property crime, all that kind of stuff. That would be great.
It's not just.
would that position help meet the Marcy's Law?
Yes, well, because Marcy's Law is everything. So, if you steal my car and trash it, and I don't have insurance or something, which I probably should have, or you do something to it, I'm still a victim of crime. Or you break into my house and my insurance won't pay because I didn't insure my ring or whatever. Any victim of a crime.
Yeah.
And it can be secondary.
But how is the governing body liable in those cases?
Well, we have to, now with Marcy's Law, part of Marcy's Law, and it's a constitutional amendment to our Montana Constitution, we have to ask for a victim's input on things, which is normally we try to do anyway, but a lot of times you'll be working with a victim and they'll say, I want him to go to prison for 20 years, and you'll say, that's not going to happen. It's actually very hard to get somebody into prison. And they can then say, I wasn't listened to, and they can file a complaint, and they could potentially sue the prosecutor or the county because we failed to listen to their rights. Now, you hope it doesn't go there, but it's kind of difficult because in my head I'd say, I want him to go to, he assaulted my daughter or whatever. He should go to prison for the maximum. Well, he's probably not going to. And so there's just some concerns about that. We do want to be mindful of the victims and secondary victims.
So Ellen, if I own the S&S and somebody breaks in on Saturday night and steals 2 12-packs of beer from me, and the sheriff's office catches him that night, puts him in jail, you guys have to make sure I'm aware that he's going to have a hearing or sentencing, and I have to be able to come down there if I want.
Yeah.
Even for just 2 12-packs of beer.
Yeah. We just hope he pleads guilty. So it doesn't land on our desk.
Right.
But yeah, it's like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, it's when you hear Marcy's Law, and because of who Marcy was, a lot of people think it just relates to maybe a sexual assault or a violence against women, or but it's all victims of crime and secondary victims. But then there's that question too about, you know, you get a call from the grandmother. I want to know, or I want to tell you, and you're not really the victim of the crime. So, but family members of a victim who is deceased because of the crime, you know, like say a mother, we need to take those. Of course, we want to listen to them, but they've got a larger role, which is good. But it can also actually tie the prosecutor's hands a little bit.
And it doesn't really lay out who is to be the one advising the victim. So when you get somebody, the sheriff's office might think that you did it, and you might think that the judge did it, and the judge thinks the sheriff, and then so if somebody is not advised, they could sue because they weren't properly.
And that's why we need a victim advocate. Because we're just recently, what was it, 2 weeks ago up in district court, the day before, we had a woman who was coming in to be sentenced, and she had stolen from a business. And I was asking, you know, my legal assistant, do the business owners know that she's being sentenced? And we didn't know. So I called and talked to the daughter, and she said her parents may decide to come. And then she called back and said, no, it's going to be too upsetting, because this was a very close worker and stuff. And I said, but is there anything you'd like me to say on your behalf? Which I've done lots of times, but just remembering or to call somebody to say, because they may have wanted to get up, and they have the right to read a statement. They have the right to ask me to say something on their behalf. And, you know, I'm concerned a couple might slip through the cracks. Yeah, so it was the day before. The woman was very nice. I really appreciated it. I went over her affidavit with her. But, you know, I'm calling her the day before because it's just, oh, wait a minute.
So could the same person theoretically, I mean, could that be a 2-for-1 job then?
You know, I don't know. They might be concerned about, like, commingling money, but I would love it. I previously worked a job where I was half-time paid in one position, half-time paid in a social worker position, where I was a half-time hospice social worker, half-time Medicaid waiver, and it came out of 2 different pots of money. I don't know if there'd be concern where, you know, the feds might say we don't want any kind of intermingling or something, but that would be a hope. Because I think we could open up to a larger pool of potential employees.
I just fear that the pool that we're going to have for the
just the part-time.
The part-time and the short-term.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good salary because it's based on the wages, but part-time is...
But if you could throw 2 of them together...
Yes, I mean, that would be ideal. That would be ideal. And then, you know, but then it's concerning because if one grant goes away and one stays or vice versa. But I was excited to get that email thinking, okay, they've heard people's concerns about how are we going to do this. I mean, is it up to, like you were saying, is it up to law enforcement to notify? It really probably is our office. And then, you know, if it slips between the cracks for me or Melinda or Lorna.
You're only one person.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on. That's a busy office up there.
A pre-sentence investigation is done by, who's doing the pre-sentence investigation?
The probation officer.
So, would the probation office be involved in that investigation?
Yeah, and they usually with the pre-sentence investigation, they'll get our plea agreement or what we've offered. Sometimes you'll go in on an open plea, you know, where we haven't been able to resolve, but the man or woman's willing to plead guilty. 99% of the time, we've got a plea agreement to give to the judge. So then the probation officer is aware of what we've agreed to, and then she can say that he or she agrees to it or doesn't agree to it. And then they can also talk to the victim at that time. They can get a victim impact statement too, things like that. But we've already gotten to the point of a plea agreement.
Does the victim have a right to review that plea deal?
Yeah, I mean, they have the right to talk to me about it. I mean, I'm not necessarily. I think the negotiation of it, but if they want a copy of my plea offer, and so that's the struggle right there, because then the probation officer can talk to them too, and get their input and get their affidavit. And yes, this is what the money is owed, or I'm going to need counseling for 5 years after what happened, and then we can make an argument to the judge on why that needs to be paid or whatever. But we've already essentially got an agreement that most of the time the judge goes with. So that's the point where the victim is talking to our office saying, I don't think that's a good idea. Or we do get victims who say, no, I don't want jail time on this person. And I do want jail time on this person. We run into that when it's familial crimes, where they're saying, no, I don't want him to go to jail. I'm saying, no, I think he needs to go to jail. So that's another problem where they're going to say, you're not listening to me. So I've got to take that into consideration. But so it's going to be a little tricky, but we'll see.
Okay.
Looking for a part-time job? All right, so we'll,
So you're
I'll give
gonna
Miss
hang on to
Swimley,
that letter?
yep. I'm gonna hang on to this, if that's okay?